Okay. So,
Gonna whisper sweet nothings.
hey everyone, hello, hello. We are here on September 10th, and we are very excited for tonight's show. I think we're on our seventh or sixth show at this point, which is amazing. Last week we had an amazing host, Vosh, on, and if you missed that, you still want to watch it, check out the YouTube channel, go look in our previous links, and you'll find it. For tonight's show, we have some pretty cool things to talk about. We're having gonna have a guest coming in at around 8:30. She reached out to us, wants to come on the show and talk about abortion. To a small YouTube channel, so always trying to help everyone out. At around 8:30, she's supposed to call in. We're also going to be talking about Tart's topic, which is silent depression, which should be interesting. Because I know a little bit into it, but I didn't want to look in too much. I wanted to be fresh and open. And what else are we talking about? Cornell West had a really interesting clip. He was on the show on Tuesday, and I thought it was a fantastic topic to cover. And I think that's all we really have planned for tonight. So, Tart, take it away with silent depression. What is it exactly, and what are we talking about precisely?
Awesome. Yeah, so the silent depression has been like a phenomenon on TikTok lately. Essentially, TikTok users have noticed that there's like some weird correlations between our economic conditions and the economic conditions that were present during the Great Depression. So some of this is real, some of it's a little bit cherry picked, and I want to kind of go over a little bit, talk over it, and see what you guys think about the topic. I've got a quick video I'm going to show us. It's just one of the sort of TikTok videos that have been circulating. I'm going to show this one's on YouTube, but I'll just show you my screen really quick.
Share your screen, okay.
Let's get this going.
Are in a silent depression. When you compare the Great Depression to today, this is going to absolutely blow your mind. In 1930, during the Great Depression, the average home in America was $3,900. The average car was $600, and the average monthly rent was $18 or $216 a year, and the average salary was $1,300 for the year. Fast forward to today, it is $436,000 for the average home, $48,000 for the average car, and the average rent is $2,000 a month or $24,000 a year, and we have a $56,000 income for the average American right now. So if you look back to the Great Depression, the house was only 3 times the average salary. Now it is 8 times the average salary. The car was 46% of the salary. The car today is 85% of the salary. And here's the craziest part. The rent was 16% of the average salary. It is now 42% of the average salary. We are in a
So that kind of gives you a primer of what to expect. Essentially, the idea is that we are living in a time where essentially we kind of have it worse in a lot of aspects compared to the way it was in the Great Depression. Some of this is bogus, some of this is real, but I want to get you guys' feedback before we go into that. What do you guys think? Have you ever heard of it, or has it come up on your TikTok at all? Start with John.
I mean, the price difficulties when it comes to basic homemaking goods, basic things that you need to live is something that I've been tracking for a couple of years now. I'm not really on TikTok because I don't engage with Chinese spyware, but I do know that the trend exists. I mean, it's bad, obviously. There's a million different economic reasons that you could posit. We could theorize to why the proportions have gone all out of whack. I'm sure that my theories are different than all of yours, but it is certainly not good, and we need to adjust our incentives in some way to make the cost of living, the cost of raising a family, lower.
Recently, like on the last couple of weeks, we had a conversation, you and John, you and I did, regarding like the family unit, and right, the decline of like the family unit. I at that point I said something along the lines that education of women is the main driver, and that's driving things like divorce. The main thing, in my opinion, that's driving the decline of the American family unit is actually this sort of a phenomenon. So the economic stresses of families has increased so much that families are afraid to have children. I have friends in my age group that are getting close to their 30s, those sorts of things. And what's happening is they're all saying the same sort of story. They're saying, I'm not going to have a family family because I can't afford that. I can barely afford my rent. I can barely afford my car. How on earth could I pay for a kid? And the response is always, oh, well, you find a way, you find a way. And your average American family just they don't want to find a way. They don't. It's not worth the kind of incentives that we have in place don't work, and the family is in decline because of that. We've seen like over the past couple of decades the decline of the American middle class has been insane. Now, the reason I think the decline of the American middle class has happened is largely as a result of conservative tax cuts. So the way tax incentives are supposed to work, the way this stuff is supposed to work, is it's supposed to be promoting a system where taxes come back to the lower class, right? So the idea is we tax the wealthy, we take that wealth, we put it back into the lower and middle class, and that grows our middle class. Now, so that means some of the wealthy will fall back into the middle class, but it will also allow upward momentum for the lower class to move into the middle class. And the healthiest economy is one with middle class. What's your thoughts, John?
I mean, I think that I have a lot of thoughts. I think that is a bit of a simplification of conservative takes on taxes. Although I wouldn't deny that that's like what the policies are currently looking like. I would say that it's not necessarily what principal conservatism would necessarily advocate. The second thing I'd say is that that's a bit of a rosy picture of redistributive tax incentives. I'm not really sure that it works out that way as easily as you might want it to. I think that when you redistribute wealth outside of where the market puts the wealth, you're necessarily making it less efficient, and there's a cost to that. I think that there's some level of redistribution that where the cost to overall efficiency is worth it, and then there's also a level where it stops being worth it. But in terms of where the family stuff is coming from, I'm not super convinced it's the economic stuff is the root cause. I think it's probably part of it. But I could imagine any number of other scenarios throughout time and history where economic conditions were much worse than they are right now and where the birth rates did not go down. And so I think that you can't put it all at the, well, they might have went down, but not down to the extent that we have today. So I don't think you can blame it all on the economics. I think
Sure, but they didn't have the opportunity to stop it, right? Like they couldn't not have children. If you were having sex, you would have children. We had the opportunity to go, you know what? I can't afford this. They just had to go, you know what? I guess we're getting poorer. Like
well,
they didn't
everybody
get a
has
choice.
the choice. It's called a little bit of self-discipline, but
They're not gonna do that.
but,
That's never happened in
I think before we go down like the total economic like deep dive, which I think is great,
Yeah.
we should go talk about that. I think we
I
also
do
have
have
to
an economic
recognize that like one of the major differences between the Great Depression and what's happening today is that not only did employment and cost go that high, there was not even the supply for it as well, right? The supply chain stopped working. Businesses and business owners didn't even have places for employment. Like we are in definitely a really stressful economic time, but it's not the same as the depression because the supply chains aren't completely fucked. We have government subsidies and mechanisms and regulations in place to prevent that type of catastrophe that has happened beforehand. But to piggyback on the idea of like the birth rates, just to go back in that direction, because I just want to go back in the direction, we have to recognize that the difference between societies that were poor and worse off, I guess I can imagine this type of sweet spot where you are in a society that's, for example, we said earlier that, our parents or generation before said, oh, you make it work, you make it happen. Well, our generations, our parents, most of us have lived off of the backs of the biggest economic boom in world history, the beginning of globalization, right? Post World War II America. Yeah, of course you'd make it work. The amount of money that entered the economy, how these people were benefited from these wars and the money pouring out of Europe and all the aid the US gave it. Like, of course, for them to just figure it out. But we're in a position where we inherited that wealth. And all of a sudden, for the first time in American history, children and their parents, they're not going to come out better than their parents statistically. They're either going to be financially the same or worse. And the reason why I think birth rates are declining there, because you know what it's like to have the other way. You know what life a child needs to have. You're not going to bring a child into the world when you know the suffering and the abuse and the issues that are going to come from that raising, when you don't have the financial means to take care of this child, especially mental health issues on the rise, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
This is exactly why I think it's not all just economic, because the economics is definitely part of it. You'd be stupid to think otherwise. But if you have a cultural position where you don't see, having kids as a good inherent unto itself, but you do kind of the utilitarian like calculation, then yeah, it makes perfect sense. But in order for that to make sense, you have to be looking at it in a kind of utilitarian way. If the culture was in a place where we saw, having kids is an inherent good, virtually regardless of circumstance, I think we'd be in a different place. So as with everything, it's a combination of multiple different factors. And that was just the point that I was trying to make, is that even in the worst economic conditions, historically speaking, also it's partially what Tart said about birth control and stuff like that. But I also do think that there's a cultural element to this. Obviously, it's a combination of multiple different things. But
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't want to have families, but the question is what's influencing that desire to not have families. Like before, they didn't have a choice. If they didn't have access to birth control, which was primarily the case for basically everybody on the planet, they didn't get to decide whether or not they had kids. Kids were happenstantial, right? You had one or you didn't.
Yeah.
And now it's like, you know what? I can make the decision. I can both have sex and not have a kid. And what are people making the decision to do? They're making the decision not to have a kid. The question is why? Well, why are they not having children? And I think this is a major factor involved in that.
Yeah, so I think it depends. We have to, right? So like, let's put our little scientist hats on. Poof. Okay, I'm a scientist. I want to figure out what influences more. Then I look for predictability, right? I would have to find a thing I can measure, try to see, can it create predictions? Can I substantiate those predictions? If I can't, then forget about it. If I can, this would be a good thing for us to consider as one of the reasons. Now, can I measure a person's attitude towards children in a reliable way that I can create predictions? I don't really think so. But I think that when we look at it, it's not real, is that I don't know that, and therefore I act as if it's not a real thing. Or I look at economic value. I look at zip code. These things have predictive value. So when I think, hey, how do I know that it's economy that's usually driving this? Because when we look at history and when we look at cross-culturally and we do these case studies and these regression analysis, because we can't create obviously a experiment where we control these variables, but we can see that, hey, this does predict low birth rate. This does predict a higher birth rate. So I think the economy is a great predictor of that.
Well, I will kind of blow up this narrative, though, for a second, because I just remembered something that was very different between the 1930s and now. Actually, there's a book. It was written by Elizabeth Warren in the 2000s. Mm-hmm. I'm citing our Native American savior politician.
Pocahontas.
Pocahontas. Yeah, that was hilarious. She wrote a book called The Two-Income Trap, and she basically wrote about how the fact that women had become educated and entered the workforce, because all of a sudden there was a virtual doubling of the labor supply, there was a commensurate lowering in wages, because as supply tends to increase, the cost of said thing tends to decrease. And we don't like to think about labor as a thing, as like a good, but it is kind of a good in many ways. So you have to
wait. Are you saying
right? No, but you have to factor that in, right? Because in the 1930s, you're talking about families and families that are working on primarily one income, and in the 2023, that salary number that you see is based on what is usually a family with two income streams. So you have to remember that when you're looking at it. Personally, I wish the economy was built in such a way that you didn't need more than one income stream to support a family. That would be my ideal economy. But when you're looking at that, you have to remember that if you're talking about household income, you should really do something like double that number.
But women aren't making the exact same amount, first off, and two, when they take time off to raise families and things like that, they lose that income. So that's not that income goes away for quite a while they're trying to raise a kid, unless we provide things like leave for the women, which we don't. There's zero leave at all to help women start a family.
I know.
It's almost as if the patriarchy kept women away from the evils of capitalism.
I mean, some might say that.
The evils
Are you
of
saying that?
capitalism.
Are you saying that?
Hey, I'm mixed on this, actually. I've heard really good arguments for that. The argument that I think ultimately it's all about. I think it's about choice. I think it's what about makes for healthy people and healthy families. I think that there's a real argument that once you let the genie out of the bottle, which was, by the way, I think a good thing that women enter the workforce. Of course, that's good, but it has the negative side effects of after you let that genie out of the bottle, you fall into the two-income trap, and then all of a sudden you can't make enough on a single income to support a more traditionally family structure, even if you want to. So
why do you think it was a good thing for women to enter the workforce?
I think it was a good thing that they have the option because I believe in the equal rights and dignity of all human beings, and I think it's a good thing that they had the option to join the workforce. Um, that's why.
Is that the only? No, is there like a real material reason?
I
You
mean, yeah.
think
The
of?
other thing is that there's a lot of intellectual capital there that you're kind of missing out on if only men are acting in the workforce. Women are often very, very smart, and if you're having half your population not participate, especially as you move away from like menial labor jobs, you're missing out on a decent amount of brain power that's useful for the economy writ large. But again, there's massive drawbacks, which is the two-income trap.
But I think you're missing the fact that participation in the workforce in our economy and in our society is also akin to freedom. It gives you the financial ability to be
Oh yeah, I
free.
don't agree with this.
Oh, you don't agree with this? You don't think that, if you, let's say you couldn't work, or society didn't really enable you to work, and you had to go ahead and like find yourself a woman who would take care of you, and you find a woman who takes care of you, and now while you're in a family and you stay at home and you take care of the kids, she's becoming a little bit of a B word. She starts, being mean and nasty and
In
belittling
order to
to
make
you
this point,
while
you have
she
to
cheats.
posit the negative version.
No, I'm not giving you that. I'm giving you that. In that situation, you entering the workforce gives you
Well,
the
yeah, yeah,
ability to
yeah,
be
yeah.
free from her oppressive tactics. But
Well,
society
this
at
is
large,
the first
I mean,
point I
women
made.
couldn't own a credit card until the 1970s in this country, right?
No, Don, this is
So
why I made the initial point, which is that it's good there's a choice because they are equal in rights and
yeah,
dignity
of
and should
course.
have the
So
option, because they should be able to choose what they want to do with their lives. This was my first point, but I'm sorry. I think it's my fault because I cut you off halfway through your point because I thought I knew where you were going. That's my fault, and I'm sorry. I would say the point that there's anything more inherently like noble or dignified about being in the workforce as opposed to taking care of your family, I would reject that outright. I don't think there's anything more inherently noble or dignified about choosing to work for a corporation than working for your family directly. But I do think it's good that you have the choice between those two things. That's a good thing in my mind.
I'll also point out I don't think that it makes sense to blame like women entering the workforce and doubling the workforce for this kind of a phenomena, right? Because
Well, no, that's
women,
the
when
point.
did women when did they really enter the workforce? What was it, the 1940s to make up for when the men were all away at war? They made the posters and had women going into the workforce, and then it became the
Yeah,
norm. And then
yeah.
over time, the more and more it came in.
Rosie
But we
derivative.
had economic booms where we were absolutely just economically
Well,
crushing
that's
it
actually a
up
bad
until what,
example.
Reagan? I wonder if
No,
there's a
that's a
correlation
bad
there.
example in his.
Reagan era, and then what we did was we stopped up the economy. So like you got to think like upward momentum in economic situations is not a natural phenomenon. It's never been a natural phenomenon. It's always been artificial. Do you know why the middle class formed? Because back when the Industrial Revolution happened, there were policies in place, not just legal policies, but it was actually policies from companies. Companies had an interest, particularly car companies, had an interest in creating a middle class so that people could afford their products. And so the Ford company put a lot of money into their workers to push them up in class so that they could afford the cars, so that they could buy the cars that they were building and making. That's what built the American middle class. And now what we've done though is we've stopped that the pulling of the money back from the wealthy into the lower class. In fact, I think it was 2019 was the first time in U.S. history that the top 400 families, wealthiest families, paid only 23% in taxes. Do you know what the average middle class paid?
I'm
24%.
not. I'm
It was
not
the
sure.
first time in U.S. history they paid more. This was released. These were economic numbers. I was just reading studies on this earlier. So these are the kind of policies that have absolutely stripped the middle class, and I think this is one of the biggest drivers for why people don't want families anymore. That's what I wanted to talk
Yeah,
about.
I would have to do like actual look into the numbers. Liars, damn liars, and statisticians. I would have to look into it. The Rosie the Riveter thing's a bad example, though. I heard this. You hear this a lot from Keynesians talking about how the World War II boom like was good for the economy, and part of the reason why America was so dominant is because like literally all of Europe, our entire economic competition was just blown to hell. Like we were the only economic game in town for like 10 or 15 years. So when people cite like the post-war era as the shining example of what our economic policies should look like, it's a complete non-comparison. We had no competition. Now we have
Yeah, but
international.
none of us did that. No,
I
I,
don't
the era I was talking about is pre
No,
World War
I know
One
that, but
actually,
you
and then
mentioned
the
Rosie the
second era
Riveter.
I cited was the
No,
1980s.
I know that. I'm
Those are
going on
not.
a tangent.
I think that when we talk about like the economic boom, we're aware of like the geopolitics that caused it. I think that. Sorry, I don't know what's coming up right now. God, I think that when we look at like why people bring up the government involvement is because the government specifically got involved in, for example, building roadways to enable car manufacturers. They subsidized all of the small towns, the suburbs outside of major cities. They invested and gave GI bills and gave people the ability to go back to the workforce and getting them back in the home after the war. Like there was a real government investment in society.
Yeah, we had
Not
the
only did we go
luxury of
through
doing that because we had no competition. We could afford to take the lack. We could afford the inefficiency because there was no punishment for it.
what inefficiency?
Anytime the government messes with natural market forces, it's naturally inefficient. And I'm not against.
Really?
Yes, definitionally, it's
Every
less
time.
economically efficient.
Do you
Every
think it was?
single
Do you think it was inefficient to build the international roadways?
Yeah, technically
What
speaking,
about
that
building
doesn't
the
mean
middle
I'm
class?
against it.
No, that
There's-
wasn't inefficient. That was a project that would have never happened if it wasn't for
We don't know
government
that.
spending. So
We don't know.
you don't know that. It happened because of government spending. When you look worldwide at other international highway systems, they're government projects, and that enabled
Okay.
the U.S. to become one of the greatest economies in the world. And we're reaping its
Yeah, we
benefits
don't
today.
like. Yeah, okay.
So why are you saying? So like, to say it's always
Because
inefficient?
I understand basic economics and I
I understand basic
like,
economics.
I know what economic efficiency is. And whenever the government messes with funds and allocates it somewhere else, they're doing it in a way that is less efficient than where the market would have put it, because that's how the market works. And I'm not saying that's bad. I actually think that there's
No,
a lot of
I think that you
temporary.
saying that was less efficient is ignoring the fact that it wouldn't have been otherwise.
Well, no, and this is why I'm saying one, we don't actually know that. It's perfectly possible there's an alternate reality where private interests built roads. Like, let's say Henry Ford wanted his cars to actually be able to drive somewhere. So that's number one. But two, I'm not saying that all inefficiency is bad. I think a lot of times there's a level of inefficiency the government can take on for other interests, especially long-term interests, that I find to be worth it. So I'm not saying it's always bad. That's not what I'm saying.
I just don't understand how it's an inefficiency. Like, would it be inefficient?
I could
for me
recommend you
to
some book titles.
no? Let me finish my thought. Right?
Yeah, sorry.
Like, how would it be inefficient for me to go ahead and do the thing that private markets haven't done globally? And there aren't examples of private markets making international wide highway systems without the government's involvement in it. Like, I just don't see. You're saying that's inefficient. No, that was the economic like investment of a lifetime.
Yeah, that doesn't.
How does it make
decrease
it
the point.
inefficient? I don't understand
That
how
could
it
have
makes
been
it
less
inefficient.
efficient than the alternative.
But there's no alternative to an example to compare it to. It's like living in La La Land.
Correct. I mean, there's market theory, and I can show you a million other examples of a million other government interferences in the market, and compare the level of efficiency on a million different examples. I couldn't give you the roads one because the government every single time stepped in. So yeah, I can't show you the alternate reality. I can show you the
even
market.
we go back to Rome, the roads
I
are
can show you
built
the
by
market theory.
government.
I can show you I can show it backed up in a million other examples, and I can posit to you a theoretical reality where it would continue to bear out. And
Yeah, but
by the way,
can-
I'm
but
still
I
not
can-
arguing against government.
I'm not saying that you're not. I think I'm trying to understand the idea of calling it something inefficient when efficiency is only in response to an established. We know how to do it. This was an inefficient way of doing it. You can find in almost any project holes in where they could have been more efficient, spend less money, more money, maximize whatever it might be. But in a project like a highway system, we don't have the comparison to even get to. I don't understand how you get to. Therefore it's
Yeah, I
always
couldn't prove it
inefficient.
definitively.
You can have a theory that generally markets are more efficient.
Yeah,
but that doesn't mean that the highway system would have been more efficient under a free market system.
not definitively. Of course, I couldn't prove that. There's no counterfactual. I could just say high probability based on
What's the denominator for the probability?
Based on everything you just said.
I didn't give you a denominator.
The general trends of markets being more efficient and general examples of stuff like that. Like, you just referenced it. Like, I couldn't prove it to you definitively because there is no counterfactual.
No, but there's no, but there. So, like, for example, what would be better? The government making bicycles for people, right? We can see the alternative. We have the data set. In every single data set of highway systems, it's always been governments.
I know. That's why I know we're going in circles. I've already admitted
Okay,
I
sure.
couldn't prove it to you definitively. There is no
Okay.
counterfactual. I agree. I just, I have, I think probably based on all the other circumstantial data.
I just don't think they could have even been able to do it based on all the data available.
I don't know. We'll see. I mean, didn't like Henry Ford like build suburbs and stuff like that? If I'm remembering
With
correctly.
government subsidies, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. If you want to read Hayek or something, you got libertarian economists theorizing how
I know.
like the market basically replaced public works.
So
If you want to read the theory, like it exists.
Of course.
Yeah.
So without getting bogged down, do you really think that the greatest force, like as Tart was saying, that like it's not the economy, or do you think the economy plays a major role, if not the predominant role, in like the being able to understand why people are or aren't having children?
I don't know. I think it's almost like a bad idea to separate these things. I think it's all cyclical, right? I think the economy informs the culture and the culture informs the economy. And like it's all so messed up. I think even demarcating between these things as discrete categories is probably not the best way of looking at it. I'm open to the argument that the economics are primarily the thing. I mean, we have really bad
Okay.
inflation right now as well. There's a level of instability just with how our economics are set up.
One of the
I
major
would be
things
open
to
to,
look at
huh?
one of the major themes I wanted to bring
Yeah,
up that kind of was going with what John was saying there. One of the big themes within this is sort of demarcating the difference between the economy. Our economy could be doing well, and your average person can still be doing really, really bad, right?
yeah,
So, like, we could say that, like, as an example, for right now, our unemployment rate is something like 3.5%. The unemployment rate during the Great Depression was like 23%, something like that, right? So we have this big gap in difference between the depression and now. But what we should be measuring isn't just unemployment, because one of the biggest problems is underemployment. And what underemployment is, for anyone in the audience who doesn't know what it is, it means someone who has like lots and lots of education. They tend to make a higher wage than they usually do, and they can't find a job within that wage range. This has been a major problem for me, actually, personally. Right now, it's been difficult to be able to find jobs that are within the wage range that I'm accustomed to, because I'm well educated. I've worked in software for years, and so it's been a major issue. But what we look at when we're measuring economic success are all the wrong numbers. We're looking, for instance, conservatives have this really bad habit of just looking at the stock market. Why are we looking at speculation about these things rather than looking at what they actually are? When you look at when you look at these sort of numbers that we've traditionally looked at, just unemployment and the stock market, and that tells us virtually nothing about your average American household and what they're going through and what their struggles are. All
Yeah.
of the economic benefits and ranges we talk about are just some generalization. Oh, look, the GDP grew by by X percent. We've got this huge GDP, but the amount of people that wealth actually ends up going to is astronomically small. The actual amount of people that make the money that the money pulls up in is just such a tiny, tiny fraction of the people. It tells us virtually nothing about the American population. And I think the American population is waking up to that. That's why these TikTok videos are going viral. Some of them are overinflating the numbers, and some of them are also cherry picking the numbers, and I'll completely own that. Some of these are like way off base.
What
But
else
there
are we
are a lot
expecting
of things
from
they're right
TikTok
about.
videos?
Yeah, it's a TikTok video. It's a TikTok video. I mean, they're not doing the
But I
research.
think that understanding that when we look at the total money, extra money generated, and you look at how it's allocated, yeah, of course it's not benefiting the middle and lower class. I think everyone agrees on that. So the question becomes, what are the ways in which we go about getting that or achieving that? And I'm sure this room is split anywhere between, we got our agnostic Thomas, who's just like, I don't really have an opinion on this. I don't know what do you, I know I kind of have a guess what John thinks, but let's start with Tart. What do you think is one of the solutions for that?
The best solution is you have to artificially make money flow. The thing is that it's not just a matter of where the money is, it's how the money moves. And so in economics, for instance, every time we've ever seen the middle class grow, it has never, not once, it has never been non-artificial. It's always been artificial to make the middle class grow. It is our responsibility and our government's responsibility to curate that growth. The way to do that is, one, you cannot have an upper class that is not taxed. It makes no sense. They are being taxed at a lower percentage rate than your average person. That is insane. It's never happened in history. Not one time in history has this happened, and suddenly happens under Trump, right? So my
Real
solution is
wages
very
also went up under
it's
Trump.
fairly obvious. We have to shift the tax burden. There was a time where the tax burden was not predominantly on your average man, but right now it is, and that tax burden is adding up. We have to shift the tax burden back to the wealthy class in order to be successful in this and rebuild the middle class. We have to do that.
Okay, John, what do you have to say? Jacinta
Well,
should be joining us soon. The caller,
I'm
if
gonna
she's
be as
watching, she
simple as
can jump
possible.
in. Yeah,
Oh,
no,
sorry,
go ahead.
yeah.
No,
I
go
will
ahead,
shut up
blabber
when the
away.
guest
This
gets
is your
here.
this is
I'll
your
be
this
as
is your
simple as
time.
possible. I was talking to Brian Kaplan about this last Monday. Actually,
Mhm.
there's an interview. The live stream's up. I'm gonna turn it into a real video, so people check that out. I will say that those tax numbers are always screwy. It depends on how you count it. But so I'm gonna reserve judgment on that. But as far as all the other things, if you want to make housing less expensive, you have to increase the supply. What is the number one thing strangling supply of houses? Overregulation on zoning laws and red tape. I lived in California. It's a nightmare. Contractors don't want to build because they're not allowed to build. So maybe you fix that. That would be a good start. Maybe you don't have a economy where so much changes based on the whims of like one guy in the Fed, creating a level of instability and unpredictability that makes people not want to think long term. Maybe we don't try to artificially move the money around like we have been for the last 4 years, because that tends to promote inflation and also create massive unpredictability. Maybe we do stuff like that.
So to attack your first point,
there, and then if all of that doesn't work, then maybe we can talk about some artificial stuff. But
no, we do not actually have. The thing is we don't need more houses. We don't have the housing crisis. Ironically, is artificial from the other end. What we have plenty of houses for everyone. We have enough houses for everyone to have houses. We could house every person in America. Guess what? Guess what we don't have though? We don't have people not investing in houses. So people are buying houses up and not living in them. They're using them as investment properties instead. That scarcity there is completely it is entirely artificial. There is no housing scarcity.
It's not artificial. That's not what
we have enough houses. There's just not people living in them.
Yeah, there are, just for rent. There's people who own them rather, and if you increase the supply, it will renege on this problem.
No, a lot of them are just being set. They're being set empty. They're just investment property. That's it.
Okay.
That it's hilarious. It literally they're not even renting them out. They're literally using them because you can buy houses in certain areas, particularly very up and coming areas, and that house will grow in value super fast. And so all rich people are doing is buying those houses, waiting for them to accrue, selling them, buying in another area, and it's creating an artificial scarcity in America. We don't have a housing crisis. The housing crisis is entirely artificial. It's built by the wealthy people.
What would you propose, Tart? Not allow people to buy property?
No. I don't think that's the best solution. Probably one of the better solutions is to do, like, I think it was Utah that did it. There was a program where what they did was the state essentially had taken people who didn't have housing, and they bought up those houses instead and housed them, and then had them pay it off over time. I can't remember how they did it. I can look into the actual number of it, but that was a specific Utah. And so what they did was essentially the government artificially stopped the housing crisis by intervening, right? And that it sounds like the worst idea ever, because it could inflate the housing property stuff as well, because they'd have to compete with these companies, which saturates the market. But it worked, and so if it works, it works. Wash my hands clean,
Yeah,
if theory be damned if it worked in reality.
So we are actually our caller Jacinta just came in. Jacinta, is that how you pronounce your name? Perry, you can bring her in. I think we're ready to. Are you here, Jacinta? Jacinta. Okay. Well, hello. Welcome to our show. I was told that you reached out to us and you wanted to come on and have a conversation about specifically abortion. What do you think the left gets wrong about abortion? Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. So, hi guys, my name is Jacinta. I work for the Center for Bioethical Reform. I go to college campuses and I talk to college students about abortion. So, what do I think the left gets wrong about abortion? The left doesn't talk about abortion. The left talks about choice. The left talks about what the woman can do with her body. The left never covers abortion. So what do they get wrong about abortion? They get everything wrong about abortion because they don't know anything about abortion, because they don't want to know anything about abortion.
But you think that the left as a whole knows nothing about abortion? Like,
I think they know nothing about
abortion doctors on the left, nurse practitioners, nurses, policy advisors, people sitting committees know nothing about abortion.
Okay,
People
so
like
when
me
you
who have
mention the
a
left, are you
college.
talking about the Twitter commentators? Are you talking
I'm
about the
talking about
podcasters? Or are you
me.
talking about
I'm, t-
everybody?
I'm talking about nurses, doctors, policy.
Dun, you're not exactly a good representation of the average Democrat
No,
voter.
I'm talking about people on the left. I'm talking about doctors, nurses, educated people, women who have gone abortions, who work in that field, who advise in
Yeah.
that field, who sit in Congress and on committees. These people know nothing about abortion. Is that what you mean by the left? Or by the left,
I
do you
think
mean reactionaries on TikTok or whatever it might be?
Well, I think it's important to identify who we mean by the left, because the movers and the shakers in the left are the ones who have the microphone. They're the people that are at the podium. They're the people that are advocating for policies that most followers are voting towards, who have no idea what they're enshrining when they're voting in the affirmative. Do the doctors who perform abortions know about abortion? Absolutely, they know about abortion. But you notice they're not the ones at the podiums discussing the procedure. They're not the ones at the podiums discussing, per se, how attractive that process is. They will endorse certain policymakers, but they don't want to discuss the issue, the real issue of abortion.
Presumably, if you're saying that the left doesn't know what abortion is, you think that the right does. And I'm going like, which of these conservatives at the podium know anything about this? Like, I can't think of a single one. A lot of them are just dumbasses. I'm going like, what do they think?
You mean the Republicans running for office?
Yeah, same. Because if the left means those who are at the podium, who are at the office, presumably the right means the same kind of a thing, right? So the ones on the right who are at the podium.
Well, if you
Most
notice,
of these
I
are
never
older,
said the
wealthy
right
dudes
knows
who
about
never had
abortion.
anything.
I said
Okay,
the left knows
awesome.
nothing about abortion.
I was just checking to see if you thought that they did. I would just say then collectively politicians know next to nothing about abortion.
I think that is the absolute truth, unfortunately. But when it does come down to who we put our check mark next to when we're voting at the ballot, likely if we have a heart, we'll vote for the person who is not enshrining extreme measures regarding abortion. We're going to align ourselves with someone that does not protect policies that talk about late-term abortions or that talk about restricting health care to babies who are born from botched abortions. We kind of steer ourselves away from supporters of these policies, and that makes sense. So then you find
What
that you're
policy
voting for a
specifically are you
Republican.
talking? What policy are you specifically talking about?
I'm talking about the Born Alive Act. So every single Democrat in lockstep voted against the Born Alive bill. And they didn't do it just once. They did it several times for several years in unison.
What's the
And it's
policy specific?
appalling.
Educate us. What's the policy?
Okay, so many people have been through an abortion and have survived. But they survived because someone out of the goodness of their heart took their botched body to a professional who nursed them and kept them alive. Now, a lot of questions were being raised for all these babies who were born who suffered from an abortion but survived. Do the doctors now have a responsibility to take care of these poor babies who were born and made it through the abortion? No, they don't. So in New York, the Reproductive Health Act makes it so that no doctor will be charged with malpractice if they allow the baby to be born after the abortion was ineffective. They would not be charged with negligence or even homicide if that baby dies in their care. I think that's abhorrent. So, New York is not isolated in this either. California is the same way now. You will not be charged with a
Okay.
homicide if you allow a baby to die on a hospital bed after it was born from a botched.
What do you think? What do you think the
So-
argument is?
We should
Go
take
ahead,
a
Tarek.
poll
A
on
quick,
this.
quick. I just decided to do a quick Google search, and it looks like the reason that the Born Alive Act was killed in the Senate had to do with the fact that it was a redundant law. So essentially, what happened was it was already illegal for a lot of these things in both states. There was already plenty of states that allowed for it. The objectionable portions had nothing to do with protecting living babies, but restricting access to abortion was built into the bill. So it was a what they call a Trojan horse bill, and that's why it was killed. So it's utter bullshit.
What are you saying that it was trying to usher in? That was the Trojan part of it.
So So let me just share my screen really quickly, and I'll show you this. This is the fact check. Let's go with.
I will say that regardless of why it got killed in the Congress, the policy does in fact exist in states. This is not a fake thing. This is a real thing.
Oh yeah, New York. I mean, they don't need the born alive.
Clarify that for everybody watching.
For some reason, it won't let me share that specific screen, but essentially, I'll just share the link really quick with you guys.
Well, can I comment on that?
So it's factcheck.org. Factcheck.org is saying that basically it was killed because one, there was a redundancy issue, and then the second issue was that it actually had built-in restrictions for abortion access, and that was the main. Yeah. That was the Trojan horse of it.
One of the major causes for even having abortions past 21 weeks.
I want to comment on what he said though regarding it being a redundant act. Roe versus Wade was a redundant act. It was pushed on the basis of healthcare.
Roe versus Wade wasn't an act.
Healthcare and privacy. I'm just saying, in terms of it being a constitutional right that was enshrined in 1973, it was a redundant measure on the basis by which it was being propagandized. Women's health. That's the label.
It was only redundant because it was challenged. That's what it means when it goes to court. It's not an act, right? It goes to court. When it goes to court, you have to reaffirm it. That's
what
the
I'm
only
saying
way.
Is that it wasn't necessary. It wasn't necessary for the reasons that a lot of women are touting that it's necessary. It's called women's health, right? As if women weren't getting health care prior to 1970.
Well, they weren't getting health care. They weren't getting the ability to terminate abortions, which is a part of
right. That's not health care.
According to whom? To you or to the doctors who provide it?
I think that's the question we need to have, right?
According to the standard of do no harm, that is like explicitly violated when you dismember a fetal human being.
So before we get to the whole dismembering, let's throw in.
Oh yeah, see, right? She's right. You guys don't want to talk about it.
We're gonna talk about it. I'm literally gonna talk about it. Do you want me to talk?
I want to bring something back up.
Talk about abortions? Do you want to not let me talk about abortions? Because I thought the left doesn't want to talk about abortions. I'm willing to talk about abortions if you're gonna let me talk about it. Right. So most abortions in the United States happen way before 13 weeks. About 90-something% of abortions. Mm-hmm. Only about 1% of abortions happen after 21 weeks.
Cool with banning everything after that?
Huh?
You want to ban everything after that?
I'm not talking. Let me finish what I have to say, right? Mm-hmm. So these procedures, also the ones after 20, cost thousands of dollars. They cost tons of travel and lost wages, and most of them are caused because of two reasons why they get taken there. One of them is that the individual needs the medical care for it to happen. These are most of the cases, or specific abnormalities that would make the child either die early, or barriers to obtaining an abortion to begin with earlier on. So if what Tart is saying that the bill was taken down specifically because it created barriers to abortion, that would be almost like a self-fulfilling little loop to itself. So if you want to talk about abortion, we can talk about the rates of abortion. That's fine.
Well, I think the tragedy is that all abortion isn't banned. I think that's the tragedy. The tragedy is that we're talking about when a life has value. That's disgusting. That's the same question that was posed to Nazi Germany. That's the same question that was posed to Mao.
No, it wasn't.
Wait, hold on. Before we dive into the philosophy, hold on. I want to get a poll of the room. I love the philosophy of this. Like the moral philosophy of abortion is probably the thing that I know the best out of anything that I talk about. But I do want to get a poll of the room. Is how do we feel about born alive bills? Is anybody? I want to get a poll of the room. Is how we feel about saving babies after abortions. Should doctors be punished if they refuse to do that, if they don't save a babies after botched abortions?
Should a doctor be saved to save a baby after botched abortion?
Yeah.
Should he be required to save that child's life after a botched abortion?
If it could be proved that that kid could have lived or whatever the situation might be, it needs to be adjudicated by court. So do I think a doctor should have the obligation to save a life? Yeah, generally yes.
Okay,
cool. Second question. This one's for you specifically, Don. Yeah. Just about the dismemberment stuff. Would you, like you said, that most abortions that are elective, let's say, do not involve a fetus that is adequately developed to be aborted in the fashion of dismemberment.
Yeah, an overwhelming majority, over 90%,
cool.
Yes.
Yeah, in that case, would you be cool with banning all the ones that are elective?
No, because I think there might be circumstances where the medical care is valid.
What circumstances?
I literally just said elective.
Thank you. That's true, yes.
Yeah. I literally just said elective.
Yeah.
Yeah, which means you're doing it because of a lifestyle.
How about this? I find out my baby has Tay-Sachs.
That's not what I asked.
I'm asking you. There's no. I have to abort my baby if I found out my baby has Tay-Sachs. That's an
I don't even know what
elective
Tay-Sachs
abortion. Tay-Sachs
honest
is a
with you.
genetic disease that's found in Ashkenazi Jews where the baby dies a horrific death at age 3 because their brain swells and breaks their skull. I
Yeah,
Does
would
it
but still
say
die
elective.
outside of the womb or inside of the womb?
outside of the womb it dies.
How long does it survive outside of the womb?
That's I don't know. Probably it could be from 2 years to 3
It
years.
said about 3 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
About 3 years.
That's a moral dilemma. I don't know the answer to that.
I would
It's-
absolutely want to abort it, 1,000%. And for
Okay.
everyone, and for other people to make that decision for me, neglects the notion that people don't want to have 9 months abortion. No one's doing that. Or like, let's go have a 9th-month abortion. That's not the reality that Americans are facing.
For most
It's not the
people.
reality.
Okay, but that I
No, hold on.
want to challenge that. I want to challenge that. But first of all, if you
Still not
read
answer the question.
if you read the New York Reproductive Health Act, the one that Governor Andrew Cuomo lit up the tower for, he lit it up pink because now New Yorkers had the right to abort later in their pregnancy. Okay, they already had abortion rights. The first state to enshrine abortion was New York. Okay, even before Roe came about, it was New York that allowed abortion. They've had abortion from the beginning. Recently, the tower was lit pink because now they could access late term abortion for what? Any reason. The law does not make it so that you have to have a serious reason to abort your child. At that point, we should not be discussing
any reason. Can we get a fact
any
check on that?
reason.
Any reason or any reason that the government doesn't have to justify the reason. So like a doctor
What does
can
that
say,
mean?
one second, a doctor can say something for the lines of, you come to a doctor, say, hey, I want to get an abortion. The doctor doesn't have to go, yeah, I'll do it for you. They don't have to do that. They have liabilities and insurance to deal with. Most women don't want to have late-term
Okay, but
abortions.
I want to talk about what the law
neglecting.
allows. I want to
Yeah.
talk about what the law allows.
Okay.
The law allows abortion on demand for any reason in New York. And
No,
going
there's
back
no
to the
abortion on demand. You don't walk into a clinic and spread your legs and get a baby pulled out of you. It's not how
Okay.
that works.
Abortion on demand means that you can advocate for your right to abort, and if you find a doctor willing to comply, that procedure can take place and no one will be held criminally responsible for that act.
Regardless of your reasoning. That's the point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and what can a non, is it criminal to for example, you go to a doctor who's licensed and has the procedures to do it, and do you think that's within their medical practice and the medical association to deal with them, for us to go ahead and just say, oh no, you can't do that past 7 months because we decided this?
So
Like
I would
that's an
say,
A-okay thing to do?
Yeah.
Because now you're not talking about abortion anymore.
Well, hold on, Dunda. I feel like you didn't answer the question, but now I feel like you did. So, even past 7 months, even at the point where it'd be dismemberment, if the woman comes in wanting an abortion, however rare it is, I understand that it's rare. You keep making the point that it's rare. I get it. That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking you that in those rare cases where it's an elective abortion, when the fetus is developed enough to be dismembered, you would want those to continue to be illegal, right? If I understand you.
Yeah, correctly. I would want that decision to be by.
Okay, so why do you bring up the fact that it's statistically rare? Who cares?
Because you're talking about legislating against it, and I'm saying there's no need for that legislation.
Okay, I see. I think I see where he's coming from.
And that legislation would be tyrannical upon women who need that abortion, who have medical reasons to take care of it, because it would go through a bureaucratic practice of a committee deciding whether or not you can go ahead and have that health care.
Okay, I think I see what you're saying.
So I looked up this law and what makes it actually controversial, and it's a lot softer than what you guys are framing it as. So essentially, what it did was, in the 1970s, there was a law that allowed for women to have. In the 1970s, there was a law that allowed women to have abortion after 24 weeks when pregnant, if it effectively threatened the woman's life. So if we had good reason to think that she might not survive either the pregnancy or the birth, they could abort it. All this did was expand it to be able to say if it threatened her health, plus the child would likely be unable to survive outside the womb. So it added 2 more conditions. That's all this bill did, and then it's been like attacked. The same thing happened in Virginia as well.
Okay.
And the bill, so do you think that if a woman's health is significantly going to be impacted by this in a negative light, and it's the case that the child would likely not survive, you don't think that they should be able to abort that child?
How do they define?
Do you know how they define health?
Yeah, that's the question, right?
I don't know how they define it. I would imagine that's going to be a healthcare professional's job.
Mental health.
Wouldn't you agree?
Let me just break some things down for you. When you're getting a 3rd trimester abortion, you're probably going to go to a really risky person to get it, because most doctors don't want to touch that with a 49.5-foot pole. So you're going to go to
Oh,
one
that
of
was
the
the other
doctors.
thing. That was one other thing I wanted to add, because that was the other thing, is that it moved the cases involving that from the criminal courts into it moved it
Civics.
under healthcare law rather than criminal law, so that was no longer a concern. That was
Okay.
the other thing that the law did.
Okay. Well, these doctors have to perform a very risky procedure so that you don't die in the process if you're the woman. And at that point, you're dealing with a major surgery and there's a lot of money involved. Okay. It is the doctor's interest to assist the woman who wants this procedure, because he's going to make a lot of money from it. Okay. So if she's in crisis, she doesn't want to go through with the pregnancy, and he's going to benefit from it. He will define health in such a way that allows her to get this procedure. And if it's her mental health that's going to be impacted by this baby, that is sufficient to terminate an 8-month-old baby in the womb. That is okay.
If we have and you also have to have that it's not likely that the child will survive. You're
No,
intentionally
you
leaving
do
that out, I
not have
think.
to have that provision. That child can be
Wait a
Yeah,
viable.
right
second.
now.
Do you
That
think that
child
a
can be
person's
completely
mental health?
viable.
Do you think that when someone goes to a mental health professional, they go into the office and be like, "Doctor, I've been really upset about this baby and it's affecting my mental health, and I feel icky in the mornings, and I want to get rid of it." No, when you're saying aborting a baby late term for mental, the woman is going to kill herself. The woman is literally depressed, not getting out of her bed, suicidal. We're talking about mental health. We're not just talking about I feel icky today.
Okay, well,
You are an incredibly
I'm going to
trusting
provide
person.
two.
No, I'm not. I just know how these things work.
I want to
Really?
provide
Because
two
I've seen
rebuttals to
undercover
that.
video indicating quite the opposite on multiple
People watch
occasions.
Steven Crowder plenty of times. Don't worry about it.
Okay,
Okay.
so are you cool with banning those instances?
In instances where the doctors lie, yeah, of course, fuck them, make them lose their license.
But even
Of
if she
course.
is
Oh, that's
suicidal,
fine.
she should not be allowed to abort her child.
That's
A
all.
lot
How
of
she's gonna kill
women,
herself?
I don't care.
Oh,
a lot
you
of
don't
women are,
care.
listen,
So she should kill herself, and then you should go and cut the baby out of her stomach. You
if
don't
she
care?
kills herself, then they'll both be dead, right? That's not going to
Not
help me
necessarily,
out,
depending on
right?
how
As
late
a
it was in the
pro-lifer, that's not going to
trimesters.
help me out. If she kills herself, then both of them are dead. She needs to be Baker acted. Anyone who's threatening self-harm needs to be Baker acted. That's care. That's true health care. And guess what? It's after the pregnancy that she's
Guess
actually
what?
more psychotic because of postpartum depression. And that's typically when mothers kill their own children, is during the fourth trimester, that postpartum state. And if she was to do that, she should not be the way she's treated before the birth and the way she's treated after the birth should be the same, because if she killed her
But
son or
what
daughter.
does that have to do with the legalization or the non-criminalization of abortion late term?
What do you mean?
Late for the 1% of abortions that happen even late term, the less than 1%, the point something that happen, you're advocating for making that illegal. You're not advocating for making sure there are better standards, for making sure there's more transparency. That's not your argument. Your
I'm
argument is
advocating
no,
for
that's
making
against
the
the law.
killing of the
Your
child
real
illegal.
argument,
Yes.
your real argument isn't even about late term abortions. Your real argument is any abortion. So how about instead of arguing not what you don't, actually argue your point? You believe abortion in all cases is wrong. Even at what point do you say? Is it at a heartbeat? Is it inception? Let's get to your real argument here.
What is an abortion? What is an abortion?
Abortion is a medical
termination
procedure
of a
terminating
pregnancy.
What is
Just
a
termination of a
pregnancy?
pregnancy. The having a child inside of you. Just
I
to go with
agree.
a simple version.
Well, at any point,
having a
killing
fertilized
child inside of
embryo.
you is wrong.
Yeah, I mean, well, it
That's
depends
why I
on what
agree.
point you define it. Yeah, that's true, because
Yeah.
it could be just
Right.
fertilized embryo.
You don't
According-
kill another person because they're inconvenient,
Do you believe an
no matter
18-year-old
what
is a
stage of life
child?
they're in.
Do you believe a 17-year-old is a child?
Do I believe a 17-year-old is a child?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Do you believe an 18-year-old is a child?
Well, according to I think they're a child, but according to our legal precedents, they're not.
Is a
Either way,
30-year-old
they're
a
a human
child?
with the right to live, so who cares?
Is a 30-year-old a child?
Yeah, you're talking about stages of development.
No, the reason
And
why
you're
I bring
proving
that
my
up.
point.
No, the reason why I bring that up is because Tart said child not to mean a fetus at 3 weeks or an
Well, why
embryo is
not?
equivalent to a 2-year-old, because it's not.
Why?
Because it has
Because
yet
it's
to
not.
be.
Okay, there's
Yay,
different stages of
philosophy.
development, right?
Yeah.
There are different stages of development. This is
Yeah, no, I hear it
this is
coming
where
too,
it's going
John.
to change. I live in Florida, right? as of 2022, April of 2022, there was a law passed to bring the abortion restrictions back to 15 weeks. Before that, it was 24 weeks. A lot of states have it at 20 or 24 weeks, right? With our medical care that has improved, we can save a baby at 50% chance of survival rate from 20 weeks on, okay? So in Florida, I could have had a child born at 20 weeks who was rescued, who survived, okay? And a mom that's 24 weeks. She can abort her child, but if you kill the preemie that's 20 weeks in a neonatal, you'll go to jail for murder. The baby outside is younger than the baby inside of the womb, but the baby is
because
in
it's
the
not about
womb.
Yeah,
not
I
about age.
understand.
That's not the point,
Yeah, I
right? So
understand.
Why
like
You're
not?
if
confused about
say
it.
for instance if I kick a woman in the stomach who intends on having her child, right? The reason that it goes to court as murder is not because the fetus has sentience or any of that, right? It's because of the value conferred on the fetus by the mother. That's the reason that goes to court. You're just
It's
completely
sad,
wrong
but
about
Hold
right
throwing a
on,
in
child
hold
behind.
on,
Florida, the law is literally
hold on.
written only the mother has the right to kill her child. That's literally how the law
You know,
is
I'm a
written.
little skeptical about you with laws because I've now caught you in two. But I'm not going to call you a liar, but I mean it was pretty damn close to just straight out lying. Like
For
those
what
first two
laws?
bills, you were wrong
I
about
didn't
both of
contradict
them.
anything you
Yeah, the
said.
first bill, by the way, I have a good friend of mine actually works in the New York State Legislative. Okay, and he just sent me a message right now on Tinder, and he said, abortion, that was really misrepresented. Two legislators who sponsored the act wrote an op-ed saying that violence resulting in a loss of pregnancy could still be prosecuted at first-degree assault. In February 2009, the Queens District Attorney Office dropped a charge of a second-degree murder against a man who murdered his pregnant girlfriend, saying their ability to press charges was repealed by the Reproductive Health Act. However, so
What are
the
you
issue
what are you saying?
the issue is that when you said the reason why they were against Reproductive Health Act is because it didn't make it as criminal as it could be. That's the problem. It went to a different committee. That's what Tart said earlier. So it was a very
The
big
Reproductive Health Act
yes.
extended the rights to abortion to be the same as those that were enabled for up to 24 weeks to be through all 9 months of pregnancy. So the freedom
Yes.
that women had to access abortion up to 24 weeks
Yeah.
was extended to after 24 weeks. And that allows for more abortions.
Yeah,
And that's why we celebrate.
that allows for a doctor who goes through all the correct medical procedures not to be criminally liable, because if they do the right thing and they go through all the medical procedures and something happens, like what if you go into a hospital and the doctor does surgery on you and does everything they can right, but you end up dying and it's not the doctor's fault? Can they be criminally liable with murder? Like that's what you're doing.
And
That's
remember,
not that's
most of
not
these
all
women
that
are
the
not
act
going in
that's
there
not all
going,
that
"I
the
just
act
didn't want a
enabled.
child." Right? That's just a mischaracterization of what's happening. What's happening? These late term abortions are not women who didn't want these children. They wanted them. That's what's so tragic about it, is that you're going into this doctor and you wanted this child, and you find out something like what was the name of the disease Don brought up earlier. You find out that your kid's head is going to explode at 3 years old. That they're going to suffer and die a horrific, tragic death, and you found out this late in the pregnancy. These women wanted these children. These are not the elective ones that happened. Those those are
Okay, but
those are really
I
early on.
still
These are
want
not
you to
late term
clarify
abortions.
what
So
laws you're
pointing out
saying
the
I got wrong.
1% of women who wanted
I want
these
to know what
children
laws
and
you said
attacking
that
them
I
is
got
really
One
wrong.
at a time,
dishonest.
guys. Come on.
The two the two laws, the first one you brought up, you didn't know the conditions that it was under, like, right? So it said it basically had the condition that if the child didn't survive, that was an extra condition that you completely missed, and it didn't do a lot of the things you
No,
were saying. Like, let me go
that's the
back to the other
point of
one
the
too.
bill. I didn't miss that at all. It's called
Oh,
the
and then
Born
sorry, that
Alive
was the
Act.
second bill.
Let her respond, bro.
That was the second bill. Sorry, the first bill. The problem was it was a Trojan horse, so it was redundant. Right,
The
that one you
first
just,
bill
I don't
that
know
we
why you didn't know
discussed,
that.
let's go back. Let's backtrack a little bit. The first bill that we discussed was the Born Alive bill, right?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
No,
you're saying that there was an
wasn't it the RH
inconsistency.
wasn't it the RHA? Not the Born
No, the
Alive?
first bill
No,
that
I
we
said that was a
discussed was
fact.
the
You
Born
didn't seem to
Alive
know
bill.
about it.
Hold on. The first bill that we discussed was the Born Alive bill, right?
Hmm.
What was the inconsistency that you said that I overlooked or didn't see?
That it was a redundant bill, and it wasn't struck down because they didn't want to save they didn't
Okay,
want to
the
save,
reason
like,
why, and that
children
I
after
did
they're
want
born.
to go
That's just
back
not
to
the
that, and I'm
reason.
glad you brought that back up. It's not a redundant bill, okay? Because,
Everything I'm seeing says it is.
well, it's the reason, but that's why people are upset about it, because in certain states, you aren't required to take care of a baby from a botched abortion. You're not required to do that. And so that's why all these Democrats had to vote towards it, because it was impacting each state. Every state had to take a position on if they were going to make it a requirement for their physicians to take care of a baby that was born alive. And every single Democrat voted no. None of them wanted to be responsible for this.
But
Now,
why did they
maybe
vote
some
no?
states already had laws.
Why
Why
did
did
they
they
vote
vote no? You're saying they voted
Why
no
did they
because
vote
they're.
no?
Why did they vote no?
Why did they vote no?
Because it was a
Yes.
Trojan horse. It
There
was a
were-
Trojan horse bill. That's
Okay.
why it had snuck things inside
For
there.
the- for the
They
Democrats-
probably all agree that after a child is born, even if it was an attempted abortion, that it
But
should
that's-
receive the same kind of care as anyone else. I think most Democrats are going to
Then
say that,
why
right?
are
They
the
voted
laws
against it
saying differently? Why are
Yeah,
the laws saying
no.
different? Why
because they keep
California-
building them into Trojan horses. Stop making the Trojan horses.
No,
Make that
that's
law.
not the
Pass
case.
it. I
Because in
guarantee you they're going to pass it.
California-
Sorry, in that case, I await with bated breath the day that Democrats put forward a clean bill to end a clean.
Oh,
bill.
I totally. I am
I'm
not
waiting for
absolving them.
Democrats
I'm
to
not.
do
I'm
that.
in no way absolving.
let's
The
say-
Democrats do the same damn thing. I
Yeah,
will
we
not
don't like
do
No,
it.
I know
Democrats
that.
here.
No, I
We don't
agree.
like.
No, I
Let's
agree.
begin this. None of
Let's say-
I
let's
don't
say-
Hold
like
on.
Democrats.
Can I have a turn?
I am not a
Hart
Democrat.
doesn't like
I'm a
Democrats.
progressive.
We're progressives. We don't like Democrats. So
We don't like
this-
Democrats.
This tu quo quo. Why did Republicans do it? That's no one's
That's
talking
not what I
about
said.
that.
That's
No
not
What
what
if
I said.
Republicans do what? What if Republicans do what?
No, the tu quo quo. You know, it's like if you do it, I
Like,
do
oh,
it. type of
Democrats
game.
do it too.
Let's
Yes,
go one
we
at a
agree.
time,
Democrats
if
do
you
it too.
don't
We
mind.
don't like that. It's a bad way of doing bills. I totally agree. It's a terrible way of doing bills.
Right,
But in this
no.
case, the reason it was struck down made sense.
No, Tark. So this is my point. I agree that both teams do this to each other, and I don't like it. What I'm saying is that if the Democrats were only incentivized by the Trojan part of the Trojan horse, and otherwise would have 100% supported a born alive bill protecting, infants who are born alive, I am waiting with bated breath for them to propose their
Yeah,
own.
they're not
version
going to do it.
of
Why
the
would they
bill.
do it? Their constituents aren't putting pressure on them to pass any type of bill, so they're not going to do it.
Well, that's my point. So
So if Republicans
Democrats
wanted to
already-
Yeah,
Hold on.
so if Republicans
Hold
want
on.
to get their bill across for their constituents, they should say, I should release a bill without a Trojan horse so it actually gets passed in Congress.
They are the stupid party. I do agree. They are very
Okay, so
ineffective.
that's why they did it, not because they were okay with letting doctors not treat post.
I actually think, I gotta disagree. I think I gotta defend Republicans on this, John. I think the thing is the liberals tend to underestimate the intelligence of Republicans. The constituency is mostly just they don't do their research, they don't pay attention. I mean, we see it all the time. They come forward and they don't seem to understand half the things they're talking about. But the Republicans as a party have been very clever. They have used our laws against us. Gerrymandering laws are supposed to defend Democrats who tend to bunch up. Like the left tends to bunch up in cities, and gerrymandering laws are supposed to help break that up so there's enough distribution of the population so that the voting is more representative of what the population is. Conservatives have utilized those laws in an incredibly clever ways to absolutely take over our entire system. They have been brilliant. I think the left has to not
Hold on.
underestimate their
Can you
intelligence.
repeat
They knew
that?
what they were doing here.
That was very quickly stated. Can you repeat what?
He's saying
I've
that
been told I
Republicans are
talk
smart
fast.
for gerrymandering to their advantage.
They are
Gerrymandering.
very
Okay,
they
that's
as a party, like the party members, these guys are legally very intelligent human beings. They are playing everyone like fiddles. They are smart men. They knew when they made that law. They knew exactly what they were doing. They were trying to have negative PR for the Democrats. And guess who was a mouthpiece for that negative PR? My friend Jacinta. That would be you. I hope I said your name correctly.
very
You were
funny.
that mouthpiece.
Well,
that
I
mouthpiece.
don't think it's.
That's a fact.
I don't think it's
You
fair.
got tricked.
I mean,
How about we let him talk?
we all know that multiple provisions are added into laws. And that's why it's difficult, right, for people to just hop on board. But what have the Democrats done to prove to their base that they aren't in favor of late-term abortion? That they don't want this to happen? Nothing.
It's not happening though. It's happening at a percentage
is
so low.
happening.
But at that,
Okay.
do you actually believe that people are going and getting late-term abortions past 21 or 24 weeks because
Voice your
they
support
Oh
have
my
for
job.
banning
Yes,
it.
Because
they do this.
because they simply just say it's icky. I don't want it anymore. Do you think that's a real issue that's facing Americans' life enough to pass
I can
legislation
tell you
that will
stories.
bar
Yes, I can
that
tell
will
you
bar
stories.
and make it that will bar and make it difficult for
There's been
women to get
journalism.
the healthcare that they need.
All right,
That
let's
is what
back this up a
that's the
little bit.
alternative that we're
There's
talking
been
about.
journalism
Because
done.
I feel
There
like
are
even if I
examples.
told you the story, you wouldn't believe me, okay? Because it is absurd.
Of course there's
Nobody wants to
stories.
think about that,
Of
right?
course
Nobody
there's
wants to think
stories.
about a woman who's 8 months pregnant, who all of a sudden doesn't want to keep her child, that she can go to Colorado, New York, California, or New Mexico and get rid of her baby and everything be okay. Nobody wants to
Is that
agree
happening?
that that's a thing, right?
Is that happening in medical institutions? Is that
In
that
some
happening?
numbers, yeah.
The thing is
Super
that
rare.
these
Okay, so
states,
provide the evidence. Just provide it. I'll believe you if there's an actual evidence.
I can.
other than a
everybody
story.
Look into it. There's real.
Okay.
If you look it up on the internet, you can find examples of the Virginia governor referenced it at one point. The fact that
Northam,
was
yeah,
that
it was
law.
disgusting.
But you can also find undercover video. You can find stuff after the fact of them finding the bodies in trucks after the fact. You can find it if you look. It does exist.
Yeah,
And no matter how rare it is evil. And if a law banning it even saves one innocent life, it is worth it. So,
What about all the other?
again,
One second.
but
What
you're
about
not
all
in
the?
favor of banning it, are you?
I am not in favor of creating a blanket law that says after 24 weeks, after 21 weeks, and what Jacinta is saying at all in any place whatsoever,
How much time do
abortion
we
should
have?
be banned. I mean, you can just hang out with us. You don't have time. You can.
Yeah, I mean,
No.
like
No,
if
I
we're
mean-
talking about like just getting rid of like mere elective instances, right? So
Like
like past
8 months?
21 ranks or
Sure.
something. That's already mostly a thing, and for most people, like that we're not gonna do that, right?
Getting
But
rid of mere
well,
elective
and
windows.
there are severe. The problem is that there are severe instances that we can't calculate into certain bills, and instead we leave that information and that decision up in the hands of healthcare professionals.
But that's not what we're
You can
talking
call
about. We're not
healthcare
talking
professionals.
about
You can
that.
call them. Well, that you
These-
said you wanted to talk about abortion. This is actually talking about what abortion is. Abortion is that you're talking about 1% of abortion and pretending that's abortion. That's not abortion. Abortion
That's
is all
No,
these
I don't
cases
think-
where women are going in.
I
That
don't
1%.
think
That's
I-
not
I'm
representative
not-
of
after this-
abortion. I actually want to talk
look.
about abortion.
Let her talk, bro.
The abortions that we started off with, I wanted to find common ground. I'm hoping that this particular group of young men also believe that late-term abortion should be a thing of the past. That no one should advocate for a person to terminate their pregnancy for a frivolous reason. That should be wrong.
Who
and that should
defines
be
frivolous?
doubled down as
I can
illegal.
define it.
You can define. Go ahead, John. Define frivolous.
Yeah, a reason that's not born from any physical threats to the life of the mother, or and I think this is a moral dilemma. I'm open to debate on this one. Is that it's the same thing for the child?
Some people would say the
If
baby,
it's for
right?
if
Yeah.
it's for a lifestyle reason, it is frivolous and elective.
Do you
And
think
did you
that
notice
medical?
that did you notice that this bill included that if the child it was like the one
I'm
particularly
not
one in New
talking
York,
about this bill. I
if
don't
it
care
was
about this bill.
unlikely to survive outside the womb, that is important in there, right? That keeps
Yeah, I'm
getting
not
missed out.
referring
Is
to the
that
bill.
these are not mere frivolous. Everyone going, hey, let's have abortions.
I don't
right?
think you're
That's
reading
Let
the
me
not
say it
what
for
we're
the
talking about.
50th time.
I don't
In
think
that
you're reading
case,
the
if
original
it's so
bill.
rare, then great. We should still ban it so it doesn't happen anymore if we agree
But
that
the
it's
thing
bad.
is, before
Why?
Yes or
Roe
no,
versus
people?
Wade, that was already allowed. Before Roe versus Wade, doctors were treating ectopic pregnancies. Before Roe versus Wade, doctors were treating mothers who had crisis pregnancies. There was no reason to put in a bill saying, now there needs to be a conversation between you and your doctor.
And other
that was
women
not necessary.
Yeah, but other women who were trying to terminate their pregnancy at like a month in, 4 weeks in, 3 weeks in, a month and a half in, were getting charged criminally before Roe v. Wade. What are you talking about?
Well, we can talk about that, but we were trying to find common ground first. I'm still waiting on a
Yeah,
yes or
and
no on elective late-term abortion.
If a woman is
Nobody's
going
willing
to
say yes
be
or no. It's really interesting.
right, I
Elective-
appreciate you helping me out here, John. That's a
Yeah,
big help.
I know. I'm noticing a lack of
we,
answer.
let's start again. Let's go back. When we talk about elective late-term abortions, I do not think that anyone past 24 weeks should just say,
Literally,
at this
Not one
point,
person.
it's icky
Okay.
I
for
don't think they
me.
should either.
All of us already said that. Now I said,
We're
okay,
already on board with that.
we're already
I don't
on
know
it.
what
Let's
else
Make
actually
it
talk
illegal?
about the thing you really care about, which is removing abortion
Yeah,
access.
mere
period.
election. I don't want the child. It should be illegal after that.
No,
sure.
hold on. Okay, cool. I'm glad we
Mere
can start with
election.
some common
That's
ground.
the,
Nice.
wait, I've said mere election like 6 times. How do you guys not hear it? I think you're
Because
not
I didn't
listening.
hear anything about illegality. I heard stuff about it being rare, and then some stuff about it being icky and bad, but I never heard.
Oh no.
people
We
say
didn't
it
just
should
say
be
that. We were
illegal.
saying overall the ones that are late term are rare, generally speaking, not just the elective ones. I don't think
Right.
the elective ones even happen.
But I'm
I
glad.
don't know
But
if
I'm
people
glad
just-
I'm glad we.
We
have
lost the
finally-
speaker. No, Jacinta,
She'll come
come back. I like her.
She'll
She's
come back.
fiery.
Yeah,
I
I'm
like her.
glad
She's
that we
feisty.
agree and found some initial common ground starting point that elective late-term abortions should not be illegal. I'm glad
I mean,
that we can
her.
all.
Well, I mean, the thing is, the reason that Democrats aren't
Hope
pushing
she
for
comes
this
back.
though is largely because they're going like they're saying like epistemically like I don't know what are the conditions that could persuade someone to make these kind of decisions, right? Like I didn't know about the disease that Don said, and neither did you, and yet you're talking about policies and you don't know the medical stuff, right? You
What
need to know
I'm
both.
pretty
You need to know
sure
the
the
policy and the
definition.
medical stuff.
Notice how I wasn't aware of that specific disease, but the definition I gave did include it.
Oh,
Cool,
Jacinta
right?
is back. Great,
She's
great,
back.
great.
It's called a moral framework.
Bring it back on.
I
It's
know,
all right.
I know, you're my
Welcome
favorite.
back,
I
Jacinta.
usually never have backup, Jacinta. It's lovely to have
Oh,
you.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, we
he's
No,
the
no,
lone
you had
conservative.
backup. You had
Hold on.
Can
backup
I
with
share my
Masha.
He used to have
screen? Am I
Masha.
able to share
Masha.
my screen?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you can share your
Yeah.
screen.
Jacinta,
Okay, all
I'm
right.
happy to inform you we accomplished mission 1 of starting common ground. They have agreed that late-term
We agreed at the
elective
beginning
abortions should be
30, 40
illegal.
minutes ago. What are you guys
Yeah, I don't
talking
know where
about?
You
that's.
didn't do
So
it
we all
particularly
agree
clearly.
that
No, you just didn't listen clearly.
I mean,
we all
we
agree
were
that-
all talking over each other.
Okay, one second. Go ahead, Jacinta. What do we all agree that?
we're not in favor of women dumping their pregnancies after 24 weeks for frivolous reasons, right?
Yeah, yeah.
For
we
what
all
I
agree
believe
with
is
that.
frivolous, sure, yeah. Exactly, sure.
Unless you
Okay.
like start equivocating on terms.
I want to show you guys this. I'm going to try my best to share my screen. I do hope that this works. Let's see here.
Well, before we
So
go,
this is a third.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, share the link.
This is a third-party resource that talks about prenatal development, and it is very helpful when we're trying to get the idea that the baby is a blob of tissue out of the minds of the general public. So I don't know if you guys can see this.
Has anyone
video.
made that argument here that it's just a blob of tissue?
No, but it is
No.
common, so she's dealing with it.
But with multiple, okay, so 90, like you guys reference, 90% of abortions happen in the first trimester, right? This is what they're talking about. Okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is an entity. This is very early. This is 4 weeks.
Okay.
And it's got a heartbeat, right? It's got a
Yeah.
heartbeat.
And
The 6-week bills.
do you eat
are in
chickens? do you
What
eat
happened?
cows?
Do I eat chickens and cows?
Often long before birth.
I
Yeah,
eat meat, yeah.
I'm completely disinterested in whether or not it has a heartbeat. I want to know when it has sentience, when it has consciousness. That's what I care about.
That's an
Like
Okay.
I'm
We'll talk
completely
about it.
disinterested in heartbeats.
Okay, so you're a person that feels like you need to be able to relate to the entity to determine.
No,
If
no,
it
just
has
that they need to
feelings.
have. I can have no relation whatsoever to the entity. It's about the degree of once we believe that they have sentience, they have experience and consciousness. That's a reason for me to think, oh, at that point, no, we shouldn't abort
Why
it.
is consciousness important?
Because that's the point which you have personhood.
Tart, by that logic,
How-
a
do you know
dog is
that?
worth more than an infant.
What is it, John?
By that logic, a dog or a chimpanzee is worth more than an infant.
It's not the degree
Right.
of consciousness. It was
No.
the having consciousness that I said. It wasn't. I didn't say
So an
anything about the
infant is
degree of
morally
consciousness.
equivalent to a dog?
No, I didn't say that. I don't think that.
Okay, so what do you mean by consciousness then?
So having a human experience, so being able to experience things as a human being.
Okay, but
hold
as
on,
a zygote, it is experiencing
Eh.
things as a very small human being.
No,
No,
it's
th-
not.
no, there's
it doesn't.
no-
It doesn't have any. It has no neural network at that point. It has zero experience. We have no reason to think that has
But
experience.
it's a.
What are you
it's-
gonna do? Make a soul
It
argument? I
is
hear a soul argument coming in.
responding to the stimuli of its environment.
That is not
Also,
enough.
amoeba. Wait one
Bacteria-
second. One
the
second.
amoebas and
One second. We have
bacteria
to
respond to
quick.
their
As the
environment.
psych major, I have to bring this in. Mollusks, crickets, ants all respond to the stimulus around them. We have tiny animals with heartbeats all the time. So when we talk about just a
But what I
heartbeat,
want,
you don't care about heartbeats. You eat chickens, you eat cows, you step on animals and creatures all the time. For you, it's specifically a human.
Yep.
Just the DNA code.
how can I share
the
this link
assembly
with
and
you guys?
Well,
How
I'm
can you
with them on that. I care enough about human experience that once I have a reason to think they have experience, that we shouldn't we should be doing a cutoff of
You
of
make
the
Tart.
electiveness,
This is
right?
interesting. You have
However, the thing is that the point at which we think that fetuses have consciousness is not when they have a heartbeat. It's way later. And guess what? We don't
Okay.
have any good reason to think at that point that they have any kind of a conscious experience, including
Okay,
because
so
they react to stimuli. That is not a reason to think that they have consciousness.
a conscience, right? So what you're saying is a person who, so basically you're saying level of development should be a determinant by which you should be given the right to life, right? Your level of development is a determining factor in whether or not I should protect your life. Is that correct?
No, that's just a straw man of the argument. Listen to specifically what I said. The point at which they have consciousness, that's where the elective surgeries should be cut off.
Yeah,
That's
you're
the argument.
determining a point. Okay, so if I said, is your name Tart?
That's my moniker. Go with Tart.
Okay, all right. If I said, hey, look, Tart, when did you start? When did you, as an entity, start on planet Earth?
When did I, as an entity, the thing that is me? I don't know if I believe in like identity over time, but if we're talking about like some sort of nebulous region, I think it's whenever there's a conscious state within my mind.
Okay, so I would disagree. Because a bio major for 6 years.
Why?
You began as an entity, as the organism that is you. Your generation began at fertilization. That was 0.0 for Tart. That was 0.0 for me. That was 0.0
I don't know
for
why
John.
you would think that.
Because that's when you were taking care of yourself.
Why?
He wasn't.
No, I wasn't.
There was no Tart.
As
I wasn't
He
there.
didn't.
a single-celled organism,
He
that's
didn't
when
exist.
you began.
He didn't begin
You're
yet.
equivocating on the term me. You're equivocating on who I am. When I talk about me, I'm talking about my conscious experience. If I
But
when I'm dead, that's when I'm dead. That's my
That's your
body.
opinion.
That's not me
but that's-
anymore. Do people are how old is Leonardo da Vinci? How old is Leonardo da Vinci, Jacinta?
I guess he's in his.
His body's still here. Every particle that makes up him is still here. Every single one of those things is still here, but he is not. Why do we say he is not here? His conscious experience is
Leonardo
gone.
He can't wake
yeah.
up. That's why.
He's gone.
The people
Because
who
he
have
can't wake up.
passed, the people who have passed, their biology is no longer sustaining them. Your biology was sustaining you at the point of a zygote, at the point
It
of
wasn't me.
fertilization. Well, that's
was not me.
your
No, it
opinion.
wasn't.
But if someone was to
But
take
that's
that
your
single
opinion.
organism,
How do you
That's-
how do you distinguish between your opinion and his opinion? Which one
I'm
is a
going to
fact?
do that right now.
Why is it
if
a
a
fact?
scientist was to take that embryo that was Tart, that single-celled organism, and look up the DNA, you would see that the DNA matched you exactly to this day. The exact
Do you know what begging
same
the question
individual.
is? Do you know what
Mhm.
begging the question is? That's the contended point that I'm not reducible to simply my DNA. That's the contended point. I don't think that. Why would I think that?
I don't think you're only your DNA. I said the organism, the entire organism.
Yeah.
Just like you're right now, you are your entire organism. That hasn't changed since day one.
Yeah, it has.
Of course it
changed.
has.
Organism.
I'm
he has-
32 right now. I was not 32 at day one.
Right,
I was
you've
not
developed-
5'7". I
Yeah,
have
but
not.
you're
I
still
did not have a
organism.
conscious
You as an
thinking. I was
organism,
not
you're
me.
still Homo sapien. You have not changed your species, right?
Yeah, you're. But the
Your
point is you're
genetic code
equivocating.
has not changed.
Yeah, you're equivocating between Tart as a human being. You're a bioimage. Did you
Tart
ever,
as a person and Tart as
Tart
a
as a
Tart
human
as a
being
person
began
and Tart
at
as a
fertilization.
body. I don't think
One at a
it's the same.
time, guys. Jeez, I can't even
have
hear
you
myself
have you
think.
ever heard of like the story of Phineas Gage, who got hit in the head with a railroad spike, had a spike
Yeah,
shoved through his eyeball?
yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
was it by his own account and everybody's account around him, he was no longer himself. Phineas Gage died on that day. And a new person arrived because their biology was not the same thing. The reason why people look back at their life when they're 10 and go, wow, I can't believe that was me. I am not even that person anymore. Or people who go through severe psychological stress or trauma change who they go, I am not me anymore. That's because they have actually changed. To say
They
that
said, I am
to
not
say-
me anymore. They
to
know who
say
they
that
are.
I am only reducible to my biology is ignoring the fact that a human being is more than just a sum of their parts.
Well, the reason why we do that, the reason why that's necessary is because if I allow you to pinpoint an arbitrary characteristic that determines whether my life has value or not, then we're in dangerous territory. Every single genocide was predicated on a group of people saying, because of this arbitrary characteristic, this group of human beings is less of a person than you or I. and it was a characteristic based on something that was typically biological. Their skin color, whether they were a man or a woman, their age. Sometimes it was
Developmental
a little bit
stage.
elevated. There was their education level. If they were uneducated, they were deemed less people. That's what the Cambodian genocides were predicated on.
Yeah.
When
So
a
who's
genocide,
who's the one who's trying to reduce identity to biology? I'm not reducing it to biology. You're reducing
Pretty
it
sure
to
that would be
biology.
you.
what I'm
Yeah.
saying is that for all of us to be safe from a totalitarian person ordained in going to the ballot box and voting that these people are not necessarily people, is that
I'm not
we
voting on
find
that
a
though.
common ground, a basis by which all human beings can
But
be
I'm
deemed
not
safe.
voting that. I'm not voting that those are not human beings. I'm voting that because you don't have the answer and I don't have the answer, and
Right, you're leaning on your
there's ambiguity around this issue because there is a demarcation problem, right? You can't reduce personhood or sentience simply to biology, and the needs are so individual and so different around other cases. I believe that the best solution to go forward is the choice of people as opposed to legislating none whatsoever.
okay, but
So I make
Wait, hold on.
the
Can I
topic.
ask a question on that real quick?
yeah, go ahead.
Yes.
So your Pascal's wager of abortion, where you're not sure where the moral line is you think the safe option is the one where you kill like a whole bunch of human beings?
No,
as
I think the
opposed to
safe. I
saying
think the
no?
safe option is the one that
Right.
has better financial, mental health, and physical health outcomes.
That sounds
Pregnancy,
really
And that's the
sketchy.
one that
No,
involves like
that's the
millions
one.
of killings,
That's
right?
the ones of letting women decide it with their doctors and their families, because you know what's happening? A, they're not doing late abortion care. That's like 1 in a trillion, and we can deal with that
That's not what I'm
outlier.
asking.
We can deal with. I'm answering. Deal with that outlier. So I'm not voting for that. I am voting for the fact that if I was pregnant and I was at a month and a half at this moment in my life and I wasn't allowed to abort it, I don't know what I would do. I'd probably go to a different country to have it done.
Okay, but that's the question. What is it, right? If I wasn't allowed to
Have an
abort
abortion.
no, that's the process. But what is it? What are we killing?
Oh, the developing fetus.
Right, but what is a developing fetus? A
A
fetus
developing fetus.
term itself means little child. It means
Very circular.
your progeny. It means your offspring.
Okay,
If
yeah,
you
fine.
Just because
are
a
allowed-
term has like a genealogy that entails that it means that does not mean that that's what we mean when we say it, right? Like I can
No,
use
but it was
words that
given
have a
that name,
genealogical
right?
like historical usage and a meaning within another language, and it doesn't have to mean what I said, right? That's not how that works. It's just
So
like
why
a
name
that's
it
just a weird
that?
assumption.
But then
Well,
why name it that?
Because it was named by people who didn't have an understanding of biology that we do, right?
No,
These
I
are
think it
people
was
that
named by
that
people who
didn't have that
understood
understanding.
exactly what was inside
Definitely
that
didn't.
person's body. It was their offspring. It was another
What do you
person.
mean? In the Bible, it's called red seed and white seed and red earth. That's what they talk about, right? It was the
But
seed,
it also
and
says that the Lord knew you before He
called it-
formed you in the
they
womb.
called it-
So
they
you
called
were
it
you
fruits.
even before your conception.
Yeah, so
according
even
to him.
after I die, I go back to heaven. I'm Jewish, so we get reincarnated. Fuck it, kill me, have me come back. I don't give a fuck. I'm fine. So
I'm just saying, if I could put on a trajectory of your life began not when you had sentience. You were alive as a thumping zygote. You were alive.
yeah,
You're
we could
alive
kill life.
Jacinta,
at
Kill
your location.
if I took off my finger and I gave it to somebody and had them test for the DNA, the finger is self-sustaining for a little while at least. It's going to keep surviving for a little
It's
bit, no
not an
matter what we do,
organism.
right?
It's not a
But if I
crocodile.
give just a second, if I give that to a scientist, you said that they would test this zygote, right? This pre-version before my sentience formed. They would test it and it would come out as me because I'm my DNA. That finger in me. Does it have a right to life? Of course not, right? Of course
Does
not.
it
Even
have
though
a
it
right
tests
to
to be
life?
me,
Define
it doesn't
life.
mean that it is
Define
me.
life.
It's not
Define
an
life. I
organism.
want you to
It's not a
define life. Do me a
self-sustaining
favor and
organism. It's
define
not.
life.
I
Is
don't
that
have like a
finger
strict
gonna
definition.
grow
I
up
think
and
there's actually a
vote? Is that
controversy
finger
within
gonna drive a
biology.
car? Is that finger gonna give a job?
Is
Is that
driving a
finger gonna
car
have its
is
own
that
children?
essential? Is that essential to life? Why? I mean, plants are alive. They don't
That's
drive
the
cars. I don't
question.
think.
Does the finger
I don't
deserve
think
a
that
right to
I don't
its
think
own
that merely
life?
One at a
having. I
time,
don't think
jeez.
merely being alive is what we're talking about, though, right? Like plants.
We
That's
are
not what we're
talking
talking
about
about.
being alive.
Not
That's what we're
merely
talking
alive.
about.
Not merely. No.
She's
No, not
talking
No,
merely
about
we
life.
are. We are. That's
No,
what this
you're not
conversation
merely
is about.
talking. No, you're not merely
No, you're
talking
not
about
merely
life
talking
because
about
you
life.
don't. Do you
We're talking about the right to that baby's life. That's what we're talking about.
the right to
can-
that?
I
No,
can-
There's no
when we
baby
say
yet.
merely life, do you know what we mean? Do you understand what we mean when we say we're not talking about mere life? we are not defending that we shouldn't use antibiotics to kill something because it's alive, right? So if I spray down my my
I think you're
countertop and
talking
it
about
kills a bunch of
human
single-celled
life. I think you're
organisms,
talking about
we're not
human
merely
life.
talking about life, right? We're talking about specific kinds of life. One,
Human
human
life,
life.
right.
Two,
Human
and not
organism
just
life.
human life. I'm talking about sentient life. I'm interested in sentience. I don't care about whether or not my finger is human life. If I take it off, it doesn't matter, right? But that doesn't have sentience, and that's why it doesn't have moral value.
It's not human life in the sense
Of course
that
it is.
it can have
In the sense, yep.
it can have a 99.
I think we're losing her.
I'm losing her. It's okay. I can give the standard. The standard is it's
Years
an
of
organism that has
exist-
a future like ours. That's the standard. Humans.
Well, I don't know what their future is going to be like, to be honest.
Future
Yeah.
like
I don't know what
ours
their
is a
future's gonna be
catch-all term for like
Yeah, so if they have Tay-Sachs, they're not a human life.
what?
If they have Tay-Sachs, they're not a human life.
That's
It's a
not
good question.
true. They have a
It's
disease, but
it's
they're still
they
a
do,
human
it's just
life.
shorter. It's a good it's a moral dilemma. I'm not sure
He's
about that.
giving you an example of something that fails to meet your definition.
No, it would still be
I would agree that is a human life.
Me
We're just
too, I
saying
would
that
also
this
agree
would be
it's a
an
human
exa-
life.
this would be
You know
an
where the
exception to
problem?
that.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah, we can hear you now. We
just
can hear you now.
because it's shorter doesn't make it not a future like ours. That's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah,
It's
it does.
shorter and more difficult doesn't make it not.
I'm
Yeah.
32. It's
Hopefully a
3.
self-aware
I mean,
experience.
it dies when it's
You
3.
guys, in
Yeah, let's
Denmark
listen
right
to
now, in Denmark, they're saying that Down syndrome was cured, right? Because of abortion, Down syndrome was cured. It's really eerie how they're proud of this, right? But they're testing for it in the womb, and they recommend that the woman abort, right? They recommend that the woman gets rid of her Down syndrome child, and that's why there's no Down syndrome kid in Denmark now, right? Okay, this is what I want you guys to understand.
Yeah,
What's
you're
the
talking
issue?
about for abortion, just like Margaret Sanger intended.
It is eugenics, yeah, and that's why there's top
Yeah.
heavy demographics in China and India right now. There's more boys than girls. So
I can simultaneously be against policies that would enforce that while being in favor of the right to choose.
Why?
Right. So, like, for
There's
instance,
nothing
Well, I
if
wanna
I
ask-
some
I
people
wanna
might be
ask you a
some
question,
people might be testing to see what rate, like, reaching in and go, oh, it's going to turn out to be a black baby. Let's abort it. I can be against that, right? I can say that's
Why?
wrong, and we
No,
shouldn't be doing that
why?
while
If
still
it's
being
not a
pro-choice.
life, why? If it's not a life, who cares? If it's
There's no
just if
value.
it's something
Well, we're talking
that
about what
doesn't
point,
deserve.
right?
But this is why it's not that we are anti-life. We are pro-choice. That is the
Okay,
difference here.
let me
You're
stop there.
arguing.
Let me stop
You're
there.
Well,
arguing
it's
with
resulted
me.
in millions of deaths. So
No, you're arguing
forgive
with
us
me.
for the confusion.
Capitalism has resulted in millions of deaths. Let's not go
That's
down this
not even-
utilitarian
that's-
point
that's
when
not
you're a
even remotely
deontologist
correct.
to begin with.
We'll
So
come back to
Such a
that.
cop-out answer.
no, so instead of jumping off that, John pretending to be a utilitarian for a second.
I'm not.
So yeah, I know you're not.
Sorry.
But the point is that we're not here to say we're anti-life. We don't want life. We're not anti-life. We're pro-choice.
But you can't even determine what life is.
We
gave you a
did.
definition
Stop.
of life.
We told you.
No,
I
you
said
don't
that
have a definition of life.
there is the demarcation problem that you were talking about. Whether you think you've answered this problem, this is a problem that isn't answered.
Your definition is 24 weeks. All of a sudden, it's a
No,
life.
I didn't
and
say
it shouldn't be
24 weeks.
touched.
It's a life. Never said
Jacinta,
that.
Okay, what is your
Jacinta,
definition of life?
Jacinta,
What is your
I can
definition of life?
I can translate and clarify this.
No, I want to
Jacinta-
hear his definition of life. Can I hear his definition of life?
No, but you guys are using the word life in different ways. I'm
Yeah,
trying
I'm
to
disinterested
clarify.
in what life is.
Well,
I'm more
that's
interested in what
the point.
personhood
That's the
is.
problem.
Yeah, well, when
I'm
you're
only interested in what personhood
Everybody,
is.
hold on for a second. I'm trying to make this conversation slightly less schizophrenic. Jacinta, when you say life, you mean valuable person. That's what you mean. You don't mean biological life. If you did, it would apply to ants and rodents. That's Tart's thing. What you mean is a life worth protecting, a life
human
that
life,
deserves
yes.
the right to life the same way developed humans
Yes.
do. When Don
Yes.
is saying life, what he means is biological life, like an ant or a rodent. So for the sake of clarity, Jacinta, you
Okay.
should use your word
No,
instead of
stop.
saying life.
I have to cut you off because Jacinta, you earlier said you gave us the biological definition of life. You
Exactly.
you gave us the definition of life. The
I
biologist
gave you the biological definition
you gave us.
of
Let me
human
finish
life.
speaking. You gave us a definition of
Not
life
human life.
that
Just
you
life.
applied. That you just put the category human next to because you synonymized human with Homo sapien.
To be fair,
But
Tart did the
this-
same thing with experience.
What you're doing is you're using a life as defined for biologists when they model human and biology, when they do their analysis and their perspective, and then just copying that over and going, human life is valuable because it starts at the moment that biologists recognize life. I'm saying
No,
I
that's
don't
not-
care
okay.
about life from the biological aspect. I care about life from the human sentient cognition aspect. And I agree with Tart here. So when I say, you want to ask me when do I think human life begins? Human lives begin when there's a complete neural and cognitive structures that allow human experience to begin. And that
Not
is
human life, valuable human life.
that's something valuable human. It's when that begins, and that is at some point in the womb. Probably, I don't know exactly when. I don't know
Nobody
exactly
knows.
where it
That's
is.
why it's bad
I don't know
standard.
exactly where it is, and I think it
Usually
depends.
we put it a little bit ahead of when we think the stem cells go into, or sorry, the spinal column connects. So once
Yeah.
those two things connect, then you have an experience that comes from your brain into your body, and we think that that's roughly the point where there's actually a formation of what we would consider some kind of human sentience. That's around 21 weeks. We put it just a little bit before that is where we usually cut it off. That's why.
And
That's
we're cool
the
with
point.
banning all elective abortion after that. Just to be clear, right?
Yeah, if it's just mere
Well,
mere
target,
election,
anyway.
not just election abortion, but mere election.
No, I
The
understand.
reason mere is in there
You would be
because
in
I
favor
might
of
choose
it.
to not have I might choose not to continue with the birth, like with, say,
Yeah.
for instance, it has with that disease that Don was talking about. It might be my choice whether or not to go through with it, right? So if I elect to not go through with it, or I say, you know what, I still want to go through with it, and I want to try to give this child a chance. Some mothers will choose to do that. Others will say, I know I can't bear that. I know I won't be able to bear that. Watching my child be born, live for 3 years, and then die a horrific, painful death, and we're pretty certain that it's going to happen. Yeah, I'm not going to do that. Right? That's not mere election. That is elective, but it's not mere election. So I'm in favor of
Can I
banning
comment on
mere
that?
election.
Yeah, one second. Tart, I don't think we're gonna get the chance to have this conversation, but I think you and I could have a great conversation just about like the.
Hey man, we could do one of the shows. Mine are on Thursday. I don't know what days yours are, but we could do a show where we chat. Yeah, that'd be fun.
Okay, Jacinta, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're
Let's do it, man.
I want to address two things. So number one, a lot of times people presuppose what women actually do say when they're in tough situations. Like a lot of times they'll say, oh, a woman shouldn't be forced to carry a rapist child because when she births the baby, she's going to see the rapist's face. And that's going to be traumatizing for her, right? That's what a lot of people think. If you talk to women who have chosen to keep their child after they were raped, and if you talk to women who have chosen to abort after they were raped, you get all kinds of stories. And they are not mostly the affirmative of aborting to forget the rapist's face. Some women do say that they were happy that they aborted because that experience can be quote unquote cast under the bridge now. That's their closure. Some women say the abortion was worse than the rape. And then some women say, I'm so glad I kept my baby.
Amazing.
So I was doing activism in Miami, and I had a couple come up to me, and we were doing like the abortion displays, and the guy was like, this is an unfair thing that you're doing here. What if the girl was raped and he was standing there with his girlfriend? And so I was about to explain, the situation of why they should still reconsider even if she was raped. I didn't get a chance to talk. His girlfriend stepped in and she looked right at him and she said, I'm keeping my baby. But a lot of women are not allowed to express how they feel on this issue because they're being spoken for on this issue already. Another thing.
Well, if all the left is advocating for is the choice, not forced abortions on this.
Another issue.
Before you move on, you just said
wait. I want
a whole lot of things.
Concept.
Okay, you said a whole lot of things. Like the entire argument you just laid forward, I'm just thinking in my head, yeah, exactly. So you let them choose. Some women see it as a positive experience. Other women are happy that they didn't get the abortion. We should educate women. We should give them the options. We should make the resources for if they want to keep the child, they can, have the economic stability
I'll come back
to do
that,
so.
Why that's not the right answer, but I appreciate that you recognize that there are some fluctuations here.
Yeah,
and I think
that's
good that you saw that.
Yeah, the only group that is advocating for legislating which one you have to choose is you. We're saying no, we're not going to advocate.
I will stand by that, and I will explain why I'm standing by that. Let me continue. So with the deformations, with children that are born with deformities, okay, more often than not, if you talk to the woman who's birthed the baby and allowed that baby to die, they suffer less trauma. I know that sounds insane, but if they're allowed to bury their baby, as opposed to intentionally killing and terminating their child, they suffer less psychologically. Okay. The third thing that I want to discuss is the fact that
please send us reports of that. I'm going to look that up.
Yeah, because I'd like a fact check on that, because I don't know any studies that indicate anything like that. What was the study
Keep
called?
going. I'll look it up.
Okay, the last thing I want to discuss is this idea of sentience. So, if according to you, the experience is what determines your right to life, right? You're having the human experience. That's what gives you the green mark to having rights, right? I think that's a dangerous precedent because according to you, a life experience may mean something very different than what it means to me. What if my definition of a true human experience is higher than the one that you're suggesting?
Okay.
Peter Singer is of the mindset that 2-year-olds should still be eligible for abortion, essentially, because they can't have the same experience
He's
that
actually
adults
logically
have.
coherent. Yeah.
Yeah, but I
It's so
would
bad. They
I
would
would
say all the Down syndrome kids should be terminated because they will never have the experience.
Yeah, but Peter Singer
that
is not
you
in the
and I
room,
have.
right? Peter Singer is not in the room. This is why I'm getting a little confused. You keep bringing up what other. We have another person who's going to join us in. It's a
Well,
friend
the
from the
reason why
Discord.
it's important to bring up these extreme perspective is because this is the trajectory of the ideas that you guys are presenting.
That's
It's
called
the
the
There's
slippery
slippery
not-
slope
slope
fallacy.
fallacy.
Slippery slope fallacy. Easy.
But
It's
that's
literally called a
that's what we have in the
fallacy.
United States. Abortion was first legalized
Jacinta,
up to
you have
quickening,
to
and then it
actually
was
address what we're
extended
saying.
all the way to birth.
You can't
That-
just ignore
You gotta
what we're
talk to us,
saying.
not at us.
That
You gotta talk to
pattern
us.
was because we allowed Pandora's box to be open. Once Pandora's box was open,
This
then
is
all
called.
the caveats
Do you know what a
and all
slippery
of the
slope fallacy
restrictions
is?
had to be reevaluated.
No,
Okay,
hold on.
understand the
Actually, let me
filibuster.
step back on this one. The slippery slope fallacy is a fallacy if you're predicting it and if you're doing it with a level of certainty that's fallacious. It is not a
Yes.
slippery slope
One
fallacy
second.
to say
Just,
that you.
do you believe that if we continue to let abortion, it's going to go into like 2-year-old
Hold on,
eugenics?
I want to hear what John was saying. If that's okay.
I was gonna-
No, that's not cool. We were trying to tell you that this slippery slope fallacy for a while, and now when John is speaking, you're letting him. Come on, address.
I just want to hear what he was
Do
saying.
you know
about
what a
the
slippery slope fallacy is?
I think I've heard of it. I think I understand why you brought it up. You're saying that just because it could go that way doesn't mean it will go that way. Is that right?
No, it's that there's not an entailment at all. So you're saying that it will go that way, right? That the fear.
I'm saying that it did go that way. It did go that
Here are
way.
the
Yeah,
extreme
I'm saying it did,
versions.
yeah.
I don't think it.
It
I
did
don't
go
think
that
it
way.
has. Like I don't right.
Governor,
Like
Governor
in
Northam
the
of
same way,
Virginia
in-
said,
if
let's
I
have
can
a
talk-
discussion after
you
the
have
baby
a-
is born. If the parents don't want it, what we're going to do with that child.
If you're just going
It
to
has
talk at
gotten
us,
now
Jacinta,
to
I
you're not
know
gonna talk
that
to us, I
quote.
don't know what
I
we're
know
doing.
that quote, and I think Tart was right when you called it. I know that quote. That entire quote, wherever you've heard it, we had a show on Colin. We had it discussing this exact thing, and that quote has been taken out of context entirely. He's talking about babies that are no longer viable after
that's
birth.
not what he said.
Oh, I
We're
will
gonna
look it up
keep-
right now.
No, I can quote
There's
you what
also
he
another
said.
fallacy
He said we're
involved.
going to keep the baby comfortable. We will try to resuscitate it. In other words, there is viability there. We'll try to resuscitate it, and then we'll have a conversation with the parents. I just heard it 10 minutes from getting on this show, so I could remember what he said. He was talking about a baby that could survive. That is what he was discussing. And if you're talking about a slippery slope,
this is like
we
this
have
is like me
fallen
saying
down
that
slippery
because
slope.
Okay, here's the
There's
quote.
a-
When
there's
we
an issue
talk about
called-
when we talk about third trimester abortion, these are done with the consent of obviously the mother and with consent of the physicians, more than one physician, by the way. And it's done in cases where there may be severe deformities that's non-viable. So in this particular example, if a mother is in labor, I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered, the infant would be kept comfortable, and the infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired. And then a discussion would ensue between the physician and the mother. So I think this is totally blown out of proportion.
It's not.
That's what they're talking about.
Let me explain how this is not blown out of proportion, okay? Down syndrome babies are typically born with a fused colon. Okay, that's one of the anomalies that happens when you have a Down syndrome child. Okay, parents can deny surgery for the fused colon. You know what that means? That means that Down syndrome baby will die. Okay, it's a mindset. Our culture has a mindset of trashing babies. Okay, and it's because we've allowed mothers to quote unquote choose. If this is a baby that you want, go ahead, have the baby. If you don't want it, make up your mind by 24 weeks. We'll take care of it. We have a throwaway culture for the babies we're developing in our bodies.
While
And
I
then
get
when
you're
you take
passionate,
that
I think you're
mindset, you
talking
can
at us
apply
and
it
not to us,
anywhere.
Yeah,
Jacinta.
yeah, you're
If it
talking,
could,
you're
I've
preaching at
got,
us.
I wanted to respond. I've been trying to get in, so I'm going to go ahead and get in. So the issue is that pointing out the nutcases, the ones on the far end of reaches, like the weird examples, it's called a nut picky fallacy, right? You're talking to me and you're talking to Don about our policy making and what we think, right? You're not talking to Peter Singer. You're talking to us. So we're sitting here shouting, that's not our position, right? Imagine if I were shouting at you about the position of conservatives, where they want to throw women and doctors in jail for this stuff. They want to go back throughout the years, and they want to find every doctor and everyone who's had this, and they want to throw them in prison for the life.
I don't know any
What if I
conservative
did that?
who
That would
believes
be a
that.
massive misrepresentation of you, and a misrepresentation
Okay.
of anyone
Okay.
who wants to ban abortion, right? So what you're
Okay.
doing is you're taking an alternative position, you're pretending that's our position, you're sticking it on us, and then you're screaming at us about it. And while you're impassioned, you're just fucking wrong.
Okay, well, let's go to your position. You're okay with abortion prior to 24 weeks. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that. Well,
Are
20.
you okay with
I
the
think it's
woman?
actually closer to 21 weeks rather than 24, because
Okay.
what happens is we have to move that back a little bit to
Why
compensate.
are we
That's
moving
usually
that
what we do.
back?
For the
Because
uncertainty.
because around 24 weeks is where we're pretty certain it has that sort of conscious position, right? That there's a likeness to be the thing. That's where we're pretty sure that happens. We're moving it back just in case it develops a little bit ahead of time, and we're just wrong
Okay.
about it,
All
right?
right. So then let me ask you this. PETA will usually get very upset if babies, if not babies, but pets are being treated unfairly, correct? If
Sure.
they're being subjected to pain, right? PETA will get
Types of animal
involved.
abuse are
Right?
illegal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
horrible.
Okay. But animals are not human beings and they're not having the sentient experience that we're having, correct?
Yeah.
They
I
have
didn't say
emotions
that's
from
the
it,
only way to
yeah.
have value.
Yeah.
So babies in the womb can feel pain at 10 weeks.
We don't know
So
that.
when that
They don't have
yes,
a
they
conscious
can.
experience of that. We do not have a reason to
I
think
didn't say they
that's
had a
false.
conscious experience. I said they could feel pain. Okay.
That's not the.
They,
When I say feel pain, I mean experience pain. If they don't have experience, they can't experience pain.
you just
That's not a
agreed
thing.
that the pets don't have the
Reactions, for
consciousness
instance,
that we have, right?
they don't have the same consciousness, but they do have experience. They do have experience. So like a dog has
Okay, so
experience, for
if the
instance.
baby is recoiling from the instruments in the
That's
second
insufficient to
trimester,
establish that. Yeah, that's
yeah,
insufficient.
then it should not be aborted, correct?
No.
That's that I just said that is insufficient to think that the baby is experiencing pain. That's insufficient.
The reason
No, I'm not
and
saying
and there
that
are
it.
some circumstances where even if the baby did
We have a
feel
lot of
pain,
examples of
abortion is
types
still a
of
valid
life.
procedure.
We have lots of examples of types of life that experience what we call
Abortion
stimuli.
on
But
children
that
who could feel
experience
pain.
is an
one at a
equivocation on the
time.
term experience. So for instance, if I introduce a certain types of bacteria to some kind of chemicals, they will react. That is, that they react to a stimuli. This does not entail or even in any way mean that the bacteria has an experience. When we say it experiences the stimuli, we don't mean that in the same way, right? We just mean that it reacts to it. Plants react to
Right.
sunlight. We know that they don't have experience. Lots and lots of things react to stimuli. So we say they react to stimuli. People who are comatose sometimes will react to stimuli. That does not mean they've experienced the stimuli they're reacting to. So you're equivocating on terms. That's
What is but that's okay, Phil. I still think it's splitting hairs because you're discussing experience according to your definition of what it meant for them to experience something.
And you're doing the same
I
thing.
so.
well, but then we'll go around in circles, right? If we
Which
do
is
that.
why
That's
we
why I'm saying you're
advocate for
equivocating.
pro-choice.
Just if you're going to critique our position, you have to critique our position, not yours, right? So when you say
Well,
it's
that's true, yeah.
experiencing stimuli, it's like no. In my view, that's not what I mean by experience. You're equivocating on the term of experience. The experience I used was very specific. It is
That
the
passed my
psychological
way.
definition, the idea that we were having subjective, a likeness to be the thing. If it doesn't have that, then it doesn't have the experience I'm interested in.
Okay, so by your definition, an experience means that it was able to process what it felt. Is that correct?
There's a likeness to it, not just a process. There's a likeness to it. Like for instance,
What do you
there's
mean
a
by
likeness to be
likeness
part.
to it? What do you mean
I
by
don't.
that?
So in philosophy of mind, this is actually kind of an irreducible thing. So there's a likeness to be me, right? That's what it means by a subjective experience, is that there's something it is like to be me, right? If that likeness to that me, the seed of experience, if that disappears, the thing that I coherently mean as me vanishes with it. I'm not there anymore. That's the point.
Yeah, like if
Yes,
God
I will.
forbid Brett
I'm
next
having
to
a hard
me,
time
we
with
got
that.
into a fight and I just punched him and knocked him out. His lights are off. But while he's out, I sit him on a table real quick, dangle his feet off the table, and hit it with a hammer, and he reacts and lifts his leg. Did he experience me hitting his leg?
I would say yes. He's still
No.
alive.
I didn't
He
ask
gets
you whether he was
experience it.
alive. I asked you whether he experienced me hitting his leg, even though he reacted to it because I hit a reflex loop.
If he experienced you hitting his leg, you're separating his. Okay, so let me ask you this: if a
Okay.
woman was unconscious and she was raped, was she raped?
Yeah, she
Like
was raped, because rape is not just about your experience of rape. Rape is a physical action, right?
Did
It's
she
not just about your
experience the
experience
rape?
of it.
No, she did not
No.
experience the rape. Was she
Okay,
So in this
raped?
case,
Yes.
you don't have to
should she?
experience
So then,
something
when she
bad in
comes
order to
out of
think
her
it's bad.
comatose, should
Sure,
she feel
under some
violated or
conditions.
not? Because she didn't experience the
I
violation.
mean, should she feel, if she never heard about it, she probably won't feel violated. But if she was aware, she started seeing bruises on her body and whatever it might
Right.
Wait, what's the standard here then? So if it's secret, it's okay?
I didn't say it was
No,
okay.
no,
one's
nobody's saying
claiming that
that.
it's
So
okay.
the
Just
She
idea
asked me
is
whether
that
no,
he
one
didn't.
second. I started it out saying
No.
it's not rape. Rape is wrong. She was still raped. We're not saying did she experience the rape?
Right,
No,
no,
just like
I
when
know.
just like if I give you anesthesia and I open up your chest to give you heart surgery and close it back up, and I go, do you remember when I opened up your chest and cut some valves and put pig tissue and sewed it together? No, you never experienced that.
Right.
Your
I know what
body
John is. I know what John is
experienced the
getting at.
trauma
What
of
John
surgery.
is
You
going to
still
get
have
at
the
is that.
scars there.
Just let me.
I know what
just let me
John
ask
is
the
about to get
question.
at, and I'll explain why. Okay, so John is going to say something like, "Okay, well, if you don't experience it, is it wrong?" We're going to say no, and he's going to go, "Oh, well, look at that. It can be wrong even if you don't experience it, right?" So I'm a
Yeah, it's
pluralist
just
about
a
this in
micro
ethics.
point. It doesn't make the argument. It's
Yeah,
just,
so I'm a.
we're messing
This
about.
assumes a generalist explanation of what's right and wrong is, and I'm a particularist. I don't go with that. So I don't think that when we say, look, this is the explanation why it's okay to abort the fetus, and it's because there's not some sort of conscious experience, doesn't entail anything else. Like, so for instance, it doesn't necessarily entail that just because someone isn't conscious currently that I can kill them, right?
Correct.
So
That
then
doesn't entail that. There's not an entailment there.
So you're
Okay,
saying
so
that
then
That assumes the
I won't
generalizability that I think is
I won't
false.
use the issues of pain or consciousness. Let's talk about demographics. So if in China every single abortion happened prior to, let's say you said 21 weeks, every single abortion happened prior to 21 weeks, and the one child policy was still in effect, and everybody wanted a boy, would it
And
be
they're aborting
okay
all
to
the girls,
abort?
right?
Leah, would it be okay to abort all of these girls at 19 weeks?
At a social level, I think no. I think it'd be bad for the culture or whatever, right? So it'd be like
Yeah.
it would cause them all sorts of major, like sustained, problematic and suffering. It would cause a lot of suffering. It's not in virtue of the fact that this was a baby or something, right? We're all having the same intuition. It's like, oh yeah, this would be a really bad thing for this culture to do. But it's not because of the fetus itself. It's because of the effects it would have that would be catastrophic on the society. That would be the whole point.
Okay, so
I
you're
would
looking
also
at
add.
that
I
as
would
far
also
as
add that when we look at where that problem was caused, the problem it didn't exist because abortion was an available medical procedure. The problem existed because of all of the policies around how to live a person's life in China that caused that to be a problem
Yeah.
in the first place. It's like me saying, you hear radical communists think that, oh, capitalism at every level and free markets just abolish them automatically. Well, free markets are fine when it comes to bicycle shops. They're not fine when it comes to oil mongols in like Saudi Arabia, right?
We should
This
let
is the
Brett get
difference
in
we have
here.
to
He's
talk
been waiting
about.
a little bit.
Yeah,
We should
Brett,
let Brett
what do
get
you
in
wanna
here. He's
say?
been
Just
waiting.
because
Brett,
oil
you
is
came
higher
on the
than
stage and we've just been
money.
going at it. We've all been duking it out, and I want to get Brett's intake too.
I
What's
do
up,
also want to
Brett?
say that we're 15 minutes away from the end, so just everyone letting you know.
Yeah, go
stop
for it.
the shot.
Let's wrap it up. But let's
We're
Brett,
gonna
what do you
talk
got to say,
about
man?
that one.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Your
Doing
mic is
good.
a
How are
little
you,
low.
man?
Can you maybe it's muffled or blocked by something?
Oh, can you hear me now?
It sounds like
it's
it sounds like your microphone is covered by something. Is there anything on your laptop or around your microphone or on the sides?
No, I could try to disconnect from my
Oh,
AirPods.
there you are.
Perfect,
You're good. You're good. We
perfect.
hear you.
Oh, you hear me now?
Oh, no.
No,
Nope,
you're
you're gone
back.
again.
You're back. You're gone again. Maybe it was your hands.
It was your hands, yeah. Nope.
Oh, he has one of
No.
those mics that's hanging down. It might have been because it was too far away from your mouth.
Oh, yeah. Put it to your mouth. Do you have like
Yeah,
put your head?
if you have a headset and the mic is is actually on the thing, is it?
Now we can't hear you at all. Go back to how it was before.
This
I
is
ruined
top tier
everything.
entertainment. Comedy
It is. It's the
gold.
best entertainment.
This is what we do, bro.
This is why I'm a Luddite.
What does that mean?
I'm not gonna elaborate because I was joking.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Oh, you
Yes,
sound
we can
great.
hear you.
Cool, from the Yeti. Sorry for that delay there. John, Jacinta, I have to call you back on the history point of genocide. It's a really disingenuous argument that the right makes, that you want to compare the Holocaust, Mao Zedong, and the rest to abortion situations. I'm an amateur historian. I only teach high school, but I got to say that out in the universe, that you really, if you want to sell how to actually make the societal change where the consciousness shift you're hoping for does happen, where there's less abortions, it's not a point to go back and talk about what Jews and many other people suffered through physical, violent revolution genocides, basically equating, a woman who has an abortion to those people. So I got to call you guys back on that, because that was me.
I mean, I agree. I don't think it's the best rhetorical strategy. I think that, like, in these conversations, it's not horrible to bring out, but I think, like, on a general, like, mass messaging level, I agree. And also, neither of us made the equivalent. Neither of us said they were directly equivalent. We said the same underlying ethos of depersonizing certain humans is the ethos that allowed for some of the great atrocities. So we should be extremely careful when using that ethos.
Well, I actually say both, but go.
I mean, that's my position. My position.
No, and I appreciate that, John, because that adds a layer of palpability to the whole thing. But what we also need to realize is that Generation Z is missing a third of its population because of abortion. 1 million abortions are happening every single year in the United States.
Oh, I have a worse statistic.
But it's not even considering the chemical abortions. These are surgical abortions.
No, more black babies are aborted in New York every year than are born.
Well, that's the other. I didn't even get a chance to get to that.
Yeah, Jesus.
But our demographic is suffering heavily. But if 1 million people in the United States are not here every single year because of this procedure, that's a genocide.
They weren't here yet. They weren't here yet.
It's not the same.
But that's according to you. That's according to you. You're saying that a flap of skin is keeping them from being here. Okay, because they're inside of a mother's
No,
womb.
I never said that.
All of a sudden, they're not here. Well, someone said that meant that
no,
they were
we're
not
talking
here.
about they didn't even have conscious experience. They were
Someone
yet
said
to
that
even
they
be.
were not here. I'm saying that they are here and they were aborted.
The humanity, that personhood in the 99% of these cases, because we agree that conscious experience starts somewhere around 20 weeks.
Okay.
We
don't agree that the conscious experience starts at 21 weeks, but that's what you guys are saying.
I mean, you're the biologist, right? So 6 years undergrad, maybe 2 years for master's, right? You know that conscious experience does not start at a week. It does not start at a month.
But we can't even agree on what consciousness is and what it takes. You were saying
which is why it's
pro-choice. Some types of consciousness,
it's
but
a
not
great
all the
standard.
Kinds of
It's why it's the only standard. We can agree that the fetus begins at like. Yeah, I think we can agree that the formation of the fetus happens at the point of conception, but why would we care about that?
If I was holding a fetus,
if I was holding a fetus in one hand and I was holding a baby in the other, fully formed, ready to go, and I dropped them at the same time, you can only save one. Which one are you saving, Jacinta?
Hold on, I want to get back to the consciousness issue, right?
I'm asking her a question about her valuations, because I think she knows there's a difference between these two beings in terms of value. If I've got a fetus and I've got a baby, the fetus is a week old. It's in a Petri cup, and I'm dropping one of them. You can only save one. Then that one, the one you save will live. Which one you saving? The baby.
Okay, well, I could turn the question on you, saying if I had a baby in this hand, I had a baby in this hand. Which one would you save?
Whichever one I can save first.
I'm going to save the baby because
you're going to save one of them. You're going to have to let one die and save the other one, right?
But which one are you going to save? Because I think I would save the baby, not the fetus. I don't think the other one's a baby. Do you think?
If it was my fetus, I would save my fetus. Like if
it was mine, I might save it too, because I might place higher value on it.
No, stop. You want to talk about evil and disgusting? That's fucking evil and disgusting.
Why?
If I had a 1 week-year-old fetus in a petri that was mine, and some other adult human baby who's like a year old, and you were going to drop them, I would never save my own fetus. That is a living, breathing, experiencing baby that someone owns, that has developed, they have gone through birth with. I am absolutely saving that.
I don't think you know that. I don't think you know that.
I 1,000% know that. I 1,000% know that. And how do you know that you would save your fetus? No,
it's
so
the
don't you
situation.
play
If you're
the small
replaced in
part,
that
because that's
situation,
disgusting. That's disgusting.
if you were placed in that situation, okay, there's so many caveats you can add to that kind of a question. But I want to address what we were talking about before, which was the issue of consciousness. Okay, for during the Roman era, women were not recognized as persons because
Why do you
they
keep
didn't have this
shifting away from the
consciousness.
point?
Is that our standard?
I'm
Are
not
we doing
shifting
that?
away from
No.
the point. We're talking about.
You didn't answer the question, and then you changed the topic. This is just a red herring. It has
No,
nothing to
that's
do
I'm
with
talking
what
about
we're
no.
talking
consciousness.
Hey, no. She had a topic, and then you posed that question. She wanted to go back to the
About
original
the
topic.
controversy. Yeah, I want to go back to consciousness real quick. Okay, consciousness is such a difficult to measure metric for someone's right to life, someone's access to their life being placed on the scale of how conscious they are. That's so risky, right?
Why? It's really not that
Because
hard. We've got a pretty good. Now
it doesn't protect the majority of the human race. It doesn't.
I'm not
protect
interested
the
in
majority
just
of the
mere
human class.
humanness. That's not what I'm interested in. I'm interested in human conscious experience. Why do you think that we can't know that? I don't understand what what would be your argument.
Because there have been
What's your
levels.
argument?
There have been times in history where they were wrong about the human conscious experience. I am a black woman. I'm a black woman. People were taught that blacks did not process at the same level as whites. Margaret Sanger, who started Planned Parenthood, labeled blacks as imbeciles.
Do you know what a non sequitur is? Okay? Do you know what a non sequitur is? This is just plain old fallacy. This is fallacy, right? Okay, you were wrong here. You were wrong here. You were wrong here. Therefore, you must be wrong here. Or therefore, you could be. If it is just a mere could be, you need an argument for why I'm incorrect. Why am I wrong? I need an actual argument that the conclusion follows from the premises. What's your premise?
The reason why I'm gonna say you're in a very dangerous territory, because your pattern of logic was used in the past and was resulting in mass deaths and
I disagree. They didn't use my pattern of logic.
Injustices. Okay, women were not deemed as conscious as men, and they were not deemed persons back in the Roman era. Blacks were not deemed as conscious as whites.
Yeah, and how did they justify it?
Jacinta, how did they justify
it? How did they justify it?
Let her finish, bro.
No, because she's saying
ask the question. No,
she keeps talking past us, and I don't know why. It's like just talk to us.
Anybody.
How did they? What was the logic? What is the logic? Give us the operation. Give us the syllogism. What is the logic? No, what is the logic that they used? Because from what I know,
it was personhood
from what
and
I know,
perceptibility.
no, what they used to take shapes of your skulls. They would do phrenology. They would look at your melanin. They would do all these other. They would reduce it to biology.
And you're reducing it in that regard
no,
too.
I'm not reducing it to biology.
He doesn't have a brain. He doesn't have a right to life.
I didn't say that they don't have a right to life because they don't have a brain. No one said that. We're not anti-life. You keep talking to us as if we're against the right to life. We're not against that.
They don't have legal protection if, according to you, they can't have the human experience.
When you ask me when do I think,
I think
it's very different than what legally the question is.
Are you a voter?
And the thing here is like you needed. The thing is the way I view ethical situations like this is that you need an argument against things, against doing specific things, right? You don't need an argument for doing things. You need an argument against doing things.
I just gave you an argument.
That was not an argument. It's a non sequitur. It's just a non sequitur, right? So I could if you point out, you could be wrong about all these things, right? In the past, people were wrong about this, and this.
Yeah.
So what? I'm looking for why I'm wrong right now, not why they were wrong.
Yeah,
why am I wrong? What's your reason? What's your argument?
Yep. Give something specific.
Okay. If I were to say you're wrong to terminate a baby prior to sentience, right? My justification for that is because you are ending a human life, and that is wrong.
Yeah, I don't care about human life.
That's not an argument. That's a conclusion.
That's just you just saying the same thing you said at the beginning, right? I asked you why
so you don't
am
think it's
I wrong?
To
why
end
am I
life?
wrong? No, that wasn't the question. The question was why am I wrong about where sentience?
John, help me out here. What am I missing? What is he trying to get me to say?
They're being perfectly clear. They're very good at this. They do this a lot, so they know exactly what they're saying. The fact that you are a living human organism does not give you the right to life in their eyes. Period. Full
Okay,
stop.
and
Yeah.
if that's
And
their
yeah, of
position,
course.
that's
I don't know
fine. But
why.
they're on the same level as Hitler, as Mao,
No, it's
as
not. No,
Caesar,
we're
As
not.
Mars.
as
No,
Margaret
No,
Jacinta,
Sanger,
that's not
as
true.
the
That is
Jacinta.
KKK.
dishonest.
If you
Jacinta.
are,
Yo, we
Right.
have a
if
rule
Right.
against ad hominems, and this is an ad hominem they have.
It's not an ad
and you,
hominem.
This is an
those
ad hominem. She's attacking our
Camden
character and
and
saying you're
Tart
just like Hitler.
Oh
get
my
to
God! One at
determine.
a time. Christ.
That's really, it's really, you're doing a disservice and a dishonor to those who died at the hands of tyrants. It's not the same thing as a 23-year-old wanting an abortion. If you want a real conversation about abortion, you have to stop using extremes like that. It's not the same thing.
Okay, tell me
Mass
how it's not
genocide
the
is not
same
the
thing.
same thing.
I
No, you
want to
tell
hear
us how it
it's
is.
not the
You
same
tell
thing.
us
Wait,
how
wait,
it
I
is.
want to hear.
Jacinta,
No, I don't.
I can answer
You
this
shouldn't have to
question.
explain that. Like,
I
for
can answer
real,
this
you don't
question in
understand
a clear and
programs against
translated way.
people.
If anybody's interested, yeah, the reason why they think it's different is because the victims of Hitler and Mao were people that they consider that were conscious, that were at a stage of development that they had a conscious experience, and the
No.
people that they are taught, the human lives they do not care about, are human lives that were not at a developmental stage to have awareness or consciousness. That's the difference that they see, and therefore
Okay.
they're fundamentally different things.
Do
That's
Right.
you
what
want to
they're
ask
looking
us
And
what? Do you want to ask us what I think is the difference between Hitler creating mass genocide, where they're forcing people into camps, taking my grandmother, pushing her across the river, and having her sisters die? Why that's different from abortion? It's different from abortion because there's no say for the mother. There's no legitimate medical, social reasoning behind it. There's no autonomy. There's no democracy. There's no liberty. We're talking about fascism. So there's and it's not even comparable. And to compare
The
them,
hilarity of how funny it is to scream at your camera that you're calling a Jew a Hitler.
No,
is the irony of this missed on you at all,
That's not
Jacinta?
what she
Because it's
said.
not missed
well,
on the rest of us.
That's not what she
Yes,
said.
she is. She
I
said
can
we were
call
in the
a
same
shout.
league as them.
Can,
Yeah,
can I,
that's
can I
different.
calling
talk?
him
Am
essentially
I
a
allowed to
Nazi.
talk?
Yeah.
Am
Go
I
ahead,
allowed
man.
to talk?
Yes.
Okay, so the termination that Hitler signed off for began with the most vulnerable in Germany. He started with the handicap. He started with people that had issues, that were not fully humans like the rest of society. And that's typically how these situations of genocide start. They start culling people based on arbitrary characteristics.
And
And
nobody's doing a cull.
abortion is such that
So
these
the
little babies.
the
Yes.
question is if consciousness is arbitrary or not as a
And
standard.
that's where I think we should have a conversation. Maybe that needs to be part
That's the
2.
question.
Yeah, I don't know why it would be an arbitrary standard. It's like, look, I only care the only kind
not
of things that have moral value like this. The only kinds of things I'm interested in and that I think have moral value. You at minimum have to have some sort of conscious experiential apparatus, right? So that at minimum you have to have that apparatus. Once you, if you,
What
for
about
instance,
a
you blow
person
someone,
who's in a
if you blow
coma?
someone's
Should a
head
person
off,
in
that
a
body,
coma be protected?
they have that apparatus. Like I said,
They had it. They don't have it right now.
No, they have that apparatus. They still
No,
have it
not if
even when
they're
you're
in
in
a
a coma.
coma.
Yes, you
They're
do.
not experiencing
They
life.
are not
You just
currently
said.
experiencing. They have the apparatus. Listen to my words, not what you want to hear. Listen to what I'm saying. You're listening for what you want to hear, not what's being said. And that's the problem. And it's been
You're
the problem
saying they
the whole
have the
time.
ability to experience life, right?
I said they have the apparatus. Listen to the term. What is the apparatus?
Machinery.
They
So
have the
does
mechanics to be able
a
to do so.
zygote. The zygote has the
No,
machinery.
it hasn't built yet. It has the
It
potential.
needs
Doesn't
some
have the apparatus
time
for
to
experience.
develop it, but it does have
Yes,
the components for the
yeah.
machinery.
Yep.
It doesn't have it, but it doesn't have the actual machinery. I'm not interested in just
Why,
the DNA
why does
coding.
it
Like, for
matter
instance,
if the components
for
are
instance,
there?
every one of my pluripotent cells, if you before you're like a 15 or 16, I can't remember what the age is, you have in your bone marrow, you have pluripotent cells. You could take those and you could conceivably clone me. So that has the DNA structure that's capable of forming that apparatus later in life. It does not mean that that thing has consciousness and has the apparatus for consciousness, right? The apparatus for consciousness is here. It's in my mind. It's in my head. And you're just equivocating on the two things, and then you're ignoring what's being said to you. Unfortunately,
I
we do
think
have to
that-
end soon, so I'll let you have the last word out of this. But I just think you're just not listening to what anyone's saying.
No, I appreciate that you're saying that the person who's in a coma has the brain that could perceive life, but it's not using those components. It's not perceiving life. And you said that it was the conscious experience, it perceiving life, that would allow it for it to not be aborted.
I already
So
addressed this point earlier. Do you remember my response? Because I'm wondering if you're listening, because it sounds like you're not listening. I responded to this earlier when John brought it up. What
what
did I
was your
say?
response to that?
So the response is that you're assuming there's a generalization, right? That I think is false. So the idea is like, okay, if I'm going to say that because this being is not conscious, then we can abort it, right? Now there are I'm a particularist about these things. It's a type of moral and ethical. It's a normative ethic
These are
essentially.
standards.
The idea is that there's not going to be this generalizability. It's not going to be as simple as just being conscious means in every given case that's the only way you can have value. It's that in this specific case, the way in which you gain value is consciousness. That's the point. That's
I don't
particularism.
understand why
Yeah,
that is.
Jacinta, basically it means that the standard doesn't have to be consistent across examples. That's what it
Okay,
means.
I
but
can
that
put it
doesn't
to you
help
in
me
a
determine
formalized
whether
argument if you
someone.
want, but
Hold on.
I don't know if you'll understand it or not. I don't know.
What?
Yeah.
Okay,
Go ahead.
so then we're gonna go back to square one then. At what state would you be okay with aborting a child?
I already gave it. Still
You
the same
said it
thing.
already. It's 21
Okay,
days
so then why did you pick that time
because
frame?
consciousness starts.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so then that is your measure. You're saying there's all these other caveats that should also be considered.
Yeah, they
But
should be.
when I ask that
There are other
question, you say,
considerations involved in other instances.
Even like sometimes,
what
even
other
if the
instances
baby,
then?
sometimes even
As a
go
simple
ahead, sorry.
example, I'm sorry. Go ahead. You can go down if you want. I was just going to say, as an example, even though the fetus has achieved the level of sentience and consciousness that I would normally apply the valuation of being a person at, we still might have a reason to abort this if, say, for instance, they had the disease Dan was talking
No,
about.
that's
Like,
not what I'm talking about.
if that's the
I'm
case,
saying,
so
what's
this
the
is
line?
to say that you're assuming a generalizability principle that I don't hold to, and I just think it's false, and you're
No,
going to need to be able to
I
defend that.
have to start somewhere. We have to start somewhere. I have to say, at what level, Ted, are you going to be okay with aborting? And then you say 21 weeks, and I say why, and you say because of sentience, right? That's
For
what you
And then
said.
but then he
mere
also says
election, yeah.
not, and he says for just like because I
For
feel
mere
like it.
election.
Just because
That's
I
what
mere
I'm
feel like
saying.
it.
For mere
But then
election, yeah.
he's
Let's keep it on
but
that.
there
Let's
could
keep it on
be,
that.
but there are we're way past that. We're at
No,
the
there
we're
are
point
not. No,
conceivable
we're not.
yes, we
exceptions.
Because
are.
I just said that the person who's comatose is not experiencing life, and yet you would still protect that
because
person.
they already had it.
No, that's not what he said. He said because they have the mechanisms to experience it.
Yeah,
So we're
they
just hoping
already
and
have
praying
it.
that
They
one
have the
day they use
mechanisms.
it.
No, because they already had it. They were alive to be comatose.
We could do an entire.
That
The
doesn't
thing
make
is, we
them
could do
not
an entire show on
experience.
just my ethical
If
structures,
they're
but I don't know
comatose,
if
they're
that's going to
not
be the right way
experiencing
to go
life.
about
By
this.
your standard, they shouldn't be protected.
But
That's
they
all I'm
had it
saying.
already.
That is not true.
It's not
That
our
doesn't follow.
standard. That's not. But we
That's what he said.
we
If it
skipped
doesn't
over.
have consciousness,
We
it
skipped over
shouldn't be
entirely.
regarded as a human
I
life.
said in
That's
this
what he said.
instance, not in that one. You have to keep in mind that the thing is a particularist is going to be a contextualist about this. They're going to say there are other factors and other things that can interplay and cause the moral fact to change. So, for instance, usually just for mere elective purposes, I am not in favor of aborting people, but once they achieve personhood. So once they achieve personhood is usually past 21 weeks is where I think roughly where it starts at. Now, after that,
That's
for
what we're
mere
talking
election,
about.
but there
Wait.
can be exceptions to this. Like, for instance, the exception that I
But
gave for
I'm
election
not talking about
was
exceptions. I'm only talking about where Tart's line is on the trajectory of gestation. At what point would you feel uncomfortable aborting an elective abortion, right?
and I gave you that
Offering an elective
several
abortion.
times
You said 21 weeks, and I said, why 21 weeks? And you
because
said
they have
because of
consciousness.
sentience. And I said, why is sentience important to you if a person who's unconscious should also have their right to life? Shouldn't
There
this
are other
baby who's
conditions
quote
that
unquote
apply
unconscious?
there. Yeah, there are alternative. There
Other
are other
conditions.
reasons that they have value.
What's
there are
another
other
reason,
reasons.
Tart? What's another reason?
Why do they have
I'm not
value? They're
saying
in
the only
comatose.
way. This is just you're assuming.
I
You're
don't
assuming
think
a
you have a really
generalizability principle.
grounded premise
Let me
regarding
fucking talk,
protecting the
dude.
person
You
who's
asked a
unconscious.
question. I'm
I
trying to
don't think
answer
you
you.
really have a strong
Jacinta,
argument.
I'm
there.
trying
no,
to
one second,
answer
Tart,
a
1
question.
second, stop.
Can we go
knows.
one at a time for the love of
Jacinta,
Christ?
you're actually not listening to him. He has specifically said that there are other conditions by which he values why a person in a comatose state has that right to life. It's not simply the current in the time frame ability or the experience of consciousness, but other factors as well.
But then why doesn't that apply to the baby in the womb?
Because I don't think there are those conditions present.
Well,
obviously.
then that's
Right,
very
I can
arbitrary. That's
translate.
very loose.
Okay,
I don't think that's
I
right.
How about
I don't see
Tart,
why. This is
Tart, how about
this
this
is
one?
the
How
difference
about this
between.
one? Have already to have had been consciousness.
No.
Yeah, I think you already have to have had personhood.
What's wrong with that?
Once
I gave you a great one.
Once you
If
gain
you've already,
personhood, I don't think you can
once
lose
you
it,
gain
really.
personhood, even if you lose it, you can, and you have the ability of getting
Even
it
when you're
back.
not
I'm
conscious,
sure.
Because then
you're
it's
still a
just a
person once you
check
have
off.
it.
You're not really respecting the person's
Yeah,
ability
you're
to
not.
be a
You're just
person.
saying stuff. You're not actually making arguments. You're like,
No, you're
I'll make
saying
an
that
argument.
if
How
at
about this?
some
I'll
point
make an
you had
actual
the human
argument.
experience, then
Instead of
your life should be protected.
you asked me for a reason. I gave you the reason, then just wave it away. But we
No,
gave
I think
you a
that's
reason.
a silly reason. You're saying that once you have the human experience and all of a sudden you check the human box and you get protections under the law,
Then you
right?
have protections under the law, even if you
Okay,
lose
well,
it.
I have one for you guys. Our Constitution doesn't protect sentience. It protects human life.
Our
Okay?
Constitution
We're talking about
didn't
what we ought
protect
to.
black people for the first 100-something years of
Right,
it
because
too.
it
Who
didn't live up to
cares?
itself.
It was not being read correctly. Correct, right.
No,
But our
no. It was
Constitution does
read
not protect
correctly. It was
consciousness.
read correctly,
It
guys.
protects human life, and a
No,
human life
guys.
begins
It
at
protects
fertilization. That's
guys,
when
I
human
didn't say
life
it wasn't right.
starts.
I didn't
to say that it
wasn't
wasn't
right.
interpreted correctly is kind of
That's not
saying
what I
the
said.
people who wrote it didn't interpret it correctly. That's a
It
very
wasn't. It said
That's not what I
the
said.
Declaration of Independence didn't mention anything about black or white people. It said
men,
protected
and men
under
legally were
the
just
law.
white people, not
not what I
black,
said.
Specifically white
not women.
landowners.
Yes,
It did not reference color.
because they didn't even conceive of needing to.
That's what I'm
Streets of
saying. But
Douglas.
it did actually protect the unborn. It said life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So if you're
As you
alive,
define
you're
it,
protected.
but this is when you're smuggling in the conclusion within the definition. You're saying life, and then you're defining it as the beginning of gestation.
No, actually, that's not true. If you read the Dobbs decision recently, there's like a 90-page exploration of like why obviously the
Yeah.
founders, like, you can go in and you can
But
look
then
into
during Roe v.
Dobbs'
Wade,
laws.
they thought
Actually, it's not
otherwise.
just from her.
And then
It's
there's
very obviously, yeah.
It's not. It's
Just
not very
everybody
obvious.
read Dobbs if you
It's
want to
not
know.
very obvious because you know that in 2004 the Heller case extended the right to bear arms to individuals, where beforehand it wasn't the case. So who's misinterpreted? That's, we all know that the Constitution is a living document. The judicial precedent is one that's built and changes throughout time, and it's just a part of the democratic process that rebirths itself and relives itself. So let's not play this originalist bullshit. So
okay, yeah, okay. Everybody read Dobbs and everybody read Roe v. Wade, and you guys can all decide what you think invents less shit.
Sure, but
yeah, I think I'm gonna come out
I
ahead
think
on
that's
that
a good
one.
call. Thank you, John. I appreciate it.
How about we
Let
actually
me give
talk?
you a conceptualization.
Go ahead, Tart.
I want to give a conceptualization really quickly of what the demand is when you say that there's a you think that sentience is the beginning of when this person has personhood and value, right? Like the thing is if you ask me why is this car wet, and I say because it rained, right? And then you go, aha, well here's a car that's wet but it didn't rain, right? That doesn't mean I failed to explain why this other car is wet, right? In the same way, the explanation for why is it okay to end this pregnancy is because this being has not achieved consciousness yet. Oh, well, here's one who doesn't have consciousness right now. And I go, sure, there's other explanations. It doesn't mean I failed to explain one. It just means that that's not the same explanation for the other. That's the point.
Okay.
That's particularism in a nutshell. A very simple example.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, we are at the end of the show.
We got to do this for real at some point. This is
so.
Let's
Jacinta,
do it, bro.
Real quick, guys,
I'm game.
before we end, I want Jacinta to go ahead, tell everyone where they can find you.
Yes.
What your hashtags are, all your stuff. You were a great trooper. We get heated and passionate. That's the whole point of good discussion.
You're feisty. I like you. I love the feist.
Jacinta, I want your Twitter.
Thank you, guys. I work for the Center for Bioethical Reform. If you go to abortionno.org, you won't want to have dinner, I swear. It lays everything out in all the grotesque truth. My blog is realitysustained.com, and I'm on YouTube at Reality Sustained as well.
Are you on Twitter?
Yeah, Robin Jacinta at Twitter. Yeah.
Let's go.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
Bye-bye.
It was a lot of fun.
Well, that was fun. That was feisty. There's a lot of things going on there. What do you think, John?
Spice.
I think that I like her deeply as a person. I do not think that she made her arguments in the optimal way. And I think that's because she's more used to doing on-the-ground work and convincing of the layman, as opposed to having the type of styles of debates and thought process that we engage in. And I think that it made it difficult for her. But I'm excited to engage in this myself at a later date with you, Tart.
Let's do it.
It should be a good time because Yeah, you've yeah.
It'll be
Well,
fun. Let's get on. Let's do it because what we can do is we can set up a future show. Me and you. I don't know what night your show is. We can just pick one of our
yeah,
nights
we'll pick
and
a
then
Monday
get on
where I
and
don't
do
have a
this. That'd be
guest.
so much fun. I'd
No,
love it. I'd love to do this.
like
Sounds like
I've
a lot
thought
of
this
fun.
through so hard. It's the thing I've thought through the most. So yeah, I
Let's
was
do
I
it.
was kind of
Yeah.
hurting for her because like I know like what she was getting at, and it's just like she just wasn't phrasing it in the way that's conducive to this kind of conversation, and there were other problems. Everybody was talking over each other. She was very non-responsive at multiple points. Um,
It was a mess. It was a
I
beautiful,
think
beautiful mess.
I think the most important thing, the biggest takeaway needs to be that, I mean, Jacinta, you did a great job, but I feel like in many you weren't actually responding to my position or Tart's position. You were responding to this position of people that you might have heard or ideas that you might have had instead of actually dealing with what we were saying.
Right, because she's an
Um,
activist, right? And so she's taking the most extreme examples that are currently allowed to try to find the most sympathetic position to push back abortion a little bit. And then you find the next most extreme position and you take that
Yeah,
and you push down the
you can
throat by yarn.
this is what
That's what she's used to.
anti-vaccine
Yeah.
this is what anti-vaccine activists do. This is what anti-chemotherapy activists
Do what
do.
any effective
show-
political
they-
campaign does if they want.
They go ahead and show pictures of children undergoing chemotherapy, and they go, and even if they survive, they end up having this type of rate back. Yeah, you can do this whole game. It doesn't invalidate the medical procedure. And
No,
dealing
I'm
with
just explaining the rhetorical
I'm not rebuttaling you. I'm just saying why
Yeah.
that strategy is bad. And even as an activist, you should be able to meet the person that you're talking to where they're at.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I do not think the rhetorical strategy is bad to meet people to like make the case as most sympathetic as you can, and march down the field slowly. I do agree it'd be great if you have both rhetorical skills, if you can have that type of mode and then also have the mode on this show. But she has one mode. She has one specialty, and she was willing to come on this show anyway. And applause for her for sticking in it.
She's got a spine. She stood up for what she believed in. I can't knock her for that.
Let's just, before we finish this up, I just remember Vancouver, October 13th, Lawrence Krauss and Travis Pangburn on stage. Then December 1st is Lawrence Krauss and Nick Pope. They're going to talk about aliens. They're going to talk about a bunch of other cool science shit. How do we know what's going on there? It's going to be a great conversation. And past that, I think that we are pretty much done with the show. My YouTube handle is Don Prager. Look me up. I just released new videos. I recently had an interview with Cornel West. I think you would love it. It would be great. Above me is John J. Parker. He's our resident, usually just the person people agree with less. But that's okay, John.
True. It's okay. Yeah. So I had a recent conversation with Brian Kaplan. He's a more free market economics guy. We were talking about housing earlier. Go and listen to that interview for his take on it. And then on Monday, I'm talking to Harvey Silvergate. He's the co-founder of FIRE, which is a watchdog group for bias on college campuses. We're going to be talking to him, seeing what's going on in academia. We'll see if I really have a tinfoil hat on or not about.
No, I didn't say you have. I said you're on the way to the store to get a tinfoil hat. Very
different
thing.
We'll see if I'm crazy. We'll find
Do
out.
you know what it means to be on the way to get a tinfoil hat situation?
Yeah, I know.
And plug yourself in.
We want you to advertise yourself, bro, but we can't hear you.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
We still can't hear you.
We still can't hear
you. It's okay.
You.
I'll plug myself more. Follow my YouTube channel. It's awesome. I make fun of people. Not really. I just tell people why they're wrong. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Thank God. I was dying.
I don't know. I'm sorry. My computer has been all messed up today. I think I muted myself to make it stop making a weird noise. So I've got Tim Maudlin coming in on Thursday, the 14th at 8 p.m. EST. We're going to be talking about basically the physics of time and space, so and the philosophy behind that. So it'll be a lot of fun.
I also want to mention that Reza Aslan is coming in November. We're going to have a conversation.
Yes, Reza Aslan's coming on. Don and I are going to be having a chat with Reza Aslan. So
for that being, I want to thank everyone for coming for tonight's show. See you on the Discord for the after show. I'm going to get a drink first. It's sweaty as hell. I had to turn off the AC. But as always, I say stay thinking. Have a good night, everyone.
Peace out.
Peace out. Cue it up, Perry.
We need to be able to have conversations without feeling like we're going to say something that gets us thrown in jail because people happen to be